across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a very good evening. This is Talk. I'm Peter Cardwell, and Donald Trump has really gone for it with Keir Starmer. His criticisms are bigger than ever before, more brutal than ever before. He says the relationship with Britain and the US was the best before the Prime Minister came along. He says he's a nice man but doesn't produce. He was asked if he had confidence in the Prime Minister, and President Trump said it's really for the people of the UK to have confidence. I mean, I've been very critical here, but I did it in a friendly way. If that's friendly, I'd be very interested as to what wasn't. Lots to talk about that, and obviously the tremendously sad news that the Iranian leadership scumbag Laranjani is dead, although you wouldn't know it according to some BBC correspondents. Also speaking about the BBC, President Trump calls the organisation corrupt and fraudulent news. We'll talk about that. We'll talk too about why Ed Miliband wants you to drink warm beer. This is a bizarre story. He says for energy reasons, to save the planet and to have net zero, that pubs and clubs should not cool down their beer for as long as they have been. We'll talk about that. Also on the debate desk, Sebastian Salak makes a return, and Claire Muldoon, who is a delight to have her back on the airwaves. She will be live in the studio with her common sense. We'll talk all about that. Also, the King's US visit. Emily Thornberry says he shouldn't go, the Labour politician. Very interesting one there. And why is it that hate crimes against Jews are half as likely to be prosecuted as those against Muslims? We'll look into all of that. And as always, I want your thoughts on everything we're talking about this evening between now and 10 o'clock. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me at 72222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can send me a voice note, less than a minute please, on 0344 499 1000. You can send me a WhatsApp text message on the main number, or you can give me a ring on the main number, which one more time is 0344 499 1000. However you want to get in contact, whatever you want to say, however you want to say it, let me know your thoughts between now and 10. So much to discuss here on Talk. Just a little update for all of those who very kindly sent me ideas for the name of this show. It's currently just Evenings on Talk. I think we need something a bit better. I'm going to see the guys tomorrow in creative, whatever that is. Apparently we have a whole department of creative people. So if you have any ideas for what this show should be called, please do text them in at 72222, or you can send me a WhatsApp as to what you think the evening show between 7 and 10 should be called, what the name should be. So I'm chatting to them tomorrow. We're having a meeting after PMQ. Should say I'm here with for Prime Minister's Questions with Julia tomorrow, 12 o'clock, high noon, and Keir Starmer will have a lot to answer, including what Donald Trump has said about him. Quite a lot of broadsides here. Let's see the main one about the relationship with the UK being very good until the current Prime Minister became Prime Minister, in Donald Trump's opinion. This is what he said in the White House.
We have a tremendous long-term relationship with the UK. I mean, people would say it's the best. I don't want to get into that, but we've had, it was the longest, the oldest, should be the best. Always was the best until Keir came along, and now, and I like him. He's a nice man. He says everything beautiful. He's a very nice man with a beautiful family. Everything's perfect, but he doesn't produce. And I think it's very inexpensive. I just said, you don't have to send me aircraft carriers. Send me a couple of minesweepers. We don't need your aircraft carriers. But even the aircraft carriers, he would only send them after we essentially won. I mean, he's sending them when there are no planes left, when the missiles are down to 8%.
I mean, that is an astonishing thing for any president to say. Let's speak to the former UK ambassador to Yemen, Edmund Fitton-Brown, who is in America. Edmund, great to have you back on the programme. What do you make of this?
Thanks, Peter. Good to be back. It is a little troubling. It doesn't entirely surprise me, because I think the UK can look like a relatively easy target for Donald Trump to attack. You can see that some of our European partners, especially Germany, who have been just as hardline about not getting involved in the Strait of Hormuz, they do rather more to give the impression of strength against Iran in other areas. And of course, we've been provoking the Americans for some time now over things like failing to proscribe the IRGC and also the premature recognition of a Palestinian state.
Edmund, it's interesting as well that President Trump was saying he was disappointed with NATO, the United Nations, any of those supranational bodies we've heard so little about in this conflict because it is unilateral rather than multilateral.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, that's the point, is that this is a unilateral conflict. It's one that the United States and Israel decided that it was necessary. I tend to agree that it was necessary, but even so, it was done without consultation with NATO. It was done without consultation with key partners. And of course, it's not just Britain, not just Germany, but also Japan, Korea, and a whole range of other allies that have chosen not to get directly involved in the Straits.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, if you had been in the Foreign Office, you'd been a senior diplomat, and you got the phone call from Downing Street or your superiors to say, hold on a second, what do we do about this? What advice would you give the Prime Minister in terms of how to act right now? He hasn't really said very much about this so far, but he's going to have to talk about it tomorrow at Prime Minister's Questions.
Yeah, I mean, it's not an easy one for him, but I think that he's too cautious. Britain has usually thrived by being America's closest ally, just as Trump said, in fact, you know, the people that they would first reach out to. And in my view, what we should have been doing is be on the front foot with the Americans and saying, how can we help? And, you know, we should have been particularly getting stuck into providing protection, for example, for the various regional partners who are being attacked by Iran. And I think if we'd been on the front foot, then this sort of diplomatic spat would have been a bit less likely.
What would you say to those who say this is an illegal war, we shouldn't be anywhere near it, we're doing the right thing? And actually, if you look at a lot of the statistical evidence, a lot of the public opinion on Starmer, they want to keep out of this war, and they presumably think that, I mean, he's a very, very unpopular Prime Minister, but they presumably think this is the correct course of action.
Yes, I think a lot of people do, but you don't get to be a leader by not leading. And you know, if you're a prisoner of opinion polls, then you're going to look weak anyway, whether or not you make the right decisions. Now, in my view, you can make a very strong case for this war, which is essentially a case that the Iranians have been in a state of undeclared war against us for the last 45 years plus. Mm-hmm. And you know, there are so many things that you can look at to justify that, including, for example, what happened a year ago when the IAEA said that Iran was seriously out of compliance with its nuclear obligations. So this doesn't need to be that controversial a war. Now, what you could say, of course, is we don't actually want to take an active part in the offensive part of this, which the Americans and the Israelis seem to have well sorted out between them. But to have offered support in the background, and particularly to have focused that support where the Iranians themselves have acted illegally against partners like Qatar, like Oman, like Saudi Arabia, like the United Arab Emirates, that would have been a much easier sell to the British public, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I mean, I wonder what your thoughts are on what's happening in Lebanon as well, because we have so many people saying, international players saying there should be at least some attempt for Hezbollah and Israel to come to a sort of ceasefire there. Do you see that this is entirely related to Iran, or just a sort of slightly separate conflict? How do you view it, Edmund, in your expert opinion?
I definitely see this one as entirely related to Iran. This is the occasion when Lebanese Hezbollah, having been sort of on the canvas really last June and therefore completely unable to contribute in the war between Israel and Iran that took place in June last year, they've recovered somewhat. They've also been increasingly fighting with Israel in a sort of skirmishing sort of way. They've been trying to rebuild their capability in southern Lebanon. The Israelis have been preventing that by surgical military operations. And so I think when Lebanese Hezbollah attacked Israel at the very beginning of this conflict, in a way it was playing into Israel's hands, because they already were very dissatisfied with the fact that the Lebanese government was not fulfilling its obligation to disarm Hezbollah. The other thing worth mentioning is that the Iranians deployed some IRGC seniors to Lebanon shortly before this conflict, during February. And so the Israelis saw this as the IRGC actually controlling a new front against Israel, which again I think is largely true. And of course a number of IRGC combatants have been killed in Lebanon by the Israelis.
Tell us a little bit about two major things that have happened. Maybe just go through them one by one. One of them is that Laranjani has been killed, and that is something I think we can all welcome. The second is that Joe Kent, who's the director of the National Counterterrorism Centre, has announced that he's resigning over the war in Iran. Maybe just take those two developments today, go through them and let me know how significant they are and what the implications will be.
Absolutely, yes. In the case of Larijani, it's also worth mentioning another casualty of the Israeli campaign who was killed not in the same strike, but at about the same time, and that was Mr. Soleimani, who was the national head of the Basij. And as you know, the Basij is this ghastly extremist police force stroke militia that enforces the Islamic Republic's control inside the country and beats down on any kind of sign of resistance or un-Islamic behavior. So these were both really important people. Soleimani is an extremely important symbolic target for the Israelis to have eliminated, because this will embolden the Iranian public to think, you know, the Basij is being destroyed in front of our eyes, and we may be able to reclaim the streets as we did in January. In the case of Larijani, he was extremely important. He was a long-term survivor, a veteran of the Islamic Revolution in Iran. And after the death of Ali Khamenei Sr., some people believe that Ali Larijani had become the single most important leader in Iran. So even though Khamenei's son, of course, has taken over as the supreme leader, Larijani was an extremely important target for the Israelis to take out. Some people have said he's a moderate. He's not a moderate. He's an extremist, and he has a huge amount of Iranian civilian blood on his hands. As for the US resignation, now this guy was the head of the National Counterterrorism Center. So it's quite a senior role, a little bit like being the head of JTAC in the UK, but a bit more senior than that. You know, it really is a sort of it's the first person the president would talk to on any sort of large, big picture counterterrorism issue. So it's quite a significant resignation. And it's interesting to try and diagnose where he's coming from, because from what I can tell from his resignation statement, it looks to me as if he comes from the Tucker Carlson wing of criticism of this war. In other words, he's not a sort of an old-fashioned American bureaucrat who is very much in favor of negotiation in all cases rather than war, as it were, somebody who might be more associated with the more traditional American politics. It looks as if he is a MAGA isolationist, and so his objection really is that it's sort of no war. We shouldn't be attacking Iran at all, and there's an element of anti-Israel in this as well. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting to see all of that. I just want to bring it back to what Yvette Cooper, our own Foreign Secretary, has been saying on Iran. She spoke to the House of Commons earlier today.
In the last 7 days, we've seen Iran particularly focus their strikes on economic infrastructure in the Gulf. Oil fields in Saudi, ports in Oman, strikes against commercial ships from Thailand and Malta, threatened mines in the Strait of Hormuz. Iran is seeking to hijack the global economy, holding hostage supplies of oil, gas and fertilizer, affecting prices and supply chains across the globe and threatening the cost of living here at home, causing real worry for our constituents across the country.
That may well all be true from Yvette Cooper. The question some people will then say is, well, getting the Straits of Hormuz clear and allowing shipping to go through there would be a positive step to arrest some of those problems with economic infrastructure, would it not, Edmund?
Well, it certainly would. I mean, I'm no expert on British politics, but that sounded to me almost as if she was positioning herself to be able to be more hawkish than Keir Starmer, because it was a very strong indictment of what Iran is doing to the economy, the global economy, rather than bringing it back to blaming Israel or the United States for starting this. Now, and I think she makes a really important point, which is, of course, that the Iranians do this and they've done it before. And I think that, again, this comes back to this point about, I do not believe this is an illegal war. I think that we had, a bit like boiling frogs, we'd got used to the idea that the Iranians just played by different rules, and it was okay for them to shut down international waterways when they saw fit. Actually, maybe this war was inevitable to tell the Iranians, you can't do this.
Edmund, always worth listening to what you say. Really appreciate you joining us on the programme this evening. That's Edmund Fitton-Brown there, who is the former UK ambassador to Yemen. What do you think of what he said? 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Quite a lot of messages coming in. Amanda says, good evening, Peter. Good evening, Amanda. When Trump criticises Starmer rather than anger, I'm sure the majority of this country feels a deep sadness and a sense of loss. Him and Mandelson, who I'm sure are both up to their necks in the scandal, they must not be let off the hook, says Amanda. Pete says, what on earth is Miliband on about? We can't afford beer now with his pal Richard III ruining the economy, of course referring to the unfortunate likeness of Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, to Richard III. Quite a lot of suggestions about what the show should be called. I'm taking inspiration from this. I'm meeting the creative team tomorrow. The Cardi P show, says Yvonne in Leicester. Ruth in Derbyshire says, I think you should call it Bedtime Talk. MG in Staffordshire says, Chat to Cardwell. Pete says, Call Cardi. Lynn in Portsmouth says, evening Peter, I think your show should be called The People's Place to Talk with Peter, says Lynn. And another person says, this is Mary in Cyprus, says The Twilight Zone. Sometimes it feels like that, certainly when it comes to the politics that we're all dealing with in world affairs. Lots to talk about on that front. And Claire Muldoon making her triumphant return to the debate desk in just a few moments' time alongside Sebastian Salek. I'm interested in not just what they have to say, but what you have to say too. So give me a shout. 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
When conflict breaks out anywhere in the world, it has consequences here at home. Talk War is your definitive national security briefing. From the conflict in Ukraine to the tensions in Gaza and the latest escalation with Iran, this is where you'll find comprehensive comment and expert analysis with multiple updates throughout the day. The Talk War podcast from Talk, available on the Talk app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you to everybody who's been in touch, including David Ferguson on Twitter, who says, agreed Keir Starmer had it all at his fingertips, says David, but he chose to single-handedly tear this once great nation apart. If not for the U-turn after U-turn, a civil war would have developed. The reasons why are baffling. The outcome is soul-destroying, says David. Jules says, hi Peter, great show. Can you verify the source of the data you cite that the British public don't want to enter the war with Iran? I've heard one saying 70% against us joining, yet I and absolutely no one I know has been asked or even against joining. Well, actually, 3/4 of British people, according to the latest polls, say the US-Iran conflict will have a negative impact on the UK and global economies in the longer term. Only 26% of British people believe the US attacks will end up having had a positive impact on stunting Iran's apparent nuclear ambitions in the long term. 2/3, 67%, think the conflict will negatively impact stability in the Middle East over the longer term. 15% think that strikes will improve the position of pro-Western factions on Iran. Reform UK and Tory voters are more positive than others, but their expectations still tend to be negative. So there are lots of, that's just the latest polling from various polling companies. We've had that, our team behind the scenes look that up. I know that YouGov is a poll that we've been looking at recently as well. We often cite what they have to say. Latest polling intention from them today, Reform 25%, so that's gone up. Greens 19%, Conservatives and Labour on 17%. That's if there were an election tomorrow, which there isn't. Lib Dems on 14%. Okay, well, let's talk to the debate desk. I'm delighted that Claire Muldoon is back in the studio. Lovely to see you. How are you doing?
And you too. I'm really well, Peter.
You're
How
well?
are you?
Yes,
And it's
very
really
well.
interesting you called X Twitter, you know.
I always call it Twitter.
Do you?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, why?
Funny that. No, I'm just saying.
It is just one of those things. I don't know, I never call it X, really. What do you call it, Sebastian?
It's always going to be Twitter to me.
Yeah, definitely. Sebastian Solak is here as well, who is, of course, the Labour councillor and commentator. Great to have you both in the studio. Let's talk Trump and see what he has been saying, because he has been very critical of Keir Starmer. He said everything was fine, essentially, until Starmer became Prime Minister. This is what the President said in the White House. Awkwardly, the Taoiseach, Micheál Martin, sitting beside him, because it is, of course, St Patrick's Day, and a very happy St Patrick's Day to all those who celebrate. Let's see what the President was saying.
We have a tremendous long-term relationship with the UK. I mean, people would say it's the best. I don't want to get into that, but we've had, it was the longest, the oldest, should be the best. Always was the best until Keir came along, and now, and I like him. He's a nice man. He says everything beautiful. He's a very nice man with a beautiful family. Everything's perfect, but he doesn't produce. And I think it's very inexpensive. I just said, you don't have to send me aircraft carriers. Send me a couple of minesweepers. We don't need your aircraft carriers. But even the aircraft carriers, he would only send them after we essentially won. I mean, he's sending them when there are no planes left, when the missiles are down to 8%.
Donald Trump speaking in the White House, wearing a green tie, because it is, of course, St Patrick's Day. Claire Muldoon, your thoughts on this? I sense you might have a few things to say.
Yeah, I mean, where do we start with all of this? And I'm really pleased that someone's actually asked you to dig a bit deeper into the polls and the polls of what the British public think about this Iran war and whether or not we should engage. Because I think for the first time, Keir Starmer actually has spot on straight through that Venn diagram. He's got the backing of his cabinet. He's got the backing of his backbenchers, and it would appear he has the backing of the British public. Now, for Trump, and that's, I don't say that lightly because I don't really think very highly of Keir Starmer, but this is a leadership that a lot of people at his level want to be at, right bang in the middle of that, which apparently he is. But going back to Trump, I mean, Trump just, it seems to be getting more and more unhinged in the things that he's saying. And I wouldn't mind as much if there was a proper pathway and if there was a proper solution to the Iran war. And I don't think Hexeth is doing him any favours whatsoever. Does anyone actually listen to Trump and actually understand, or even want to understand, or think what he says is the absolute truth and we should all kowtow to it? I actually think Starmer should maybe push Trump a wee bit more and stand up to him a wee bit more. And we know that didn't work for Spain. But I think Merz is feeling the same. Macron's feeling the same. I don't know about Meloni in Italy because that's been quite quiet. But this, what really worries me is the shift in this country to more European shift. And I don't think that would be really helpful either. And I know that's what Rachel Reeves wants. She said it often in the spring statement, in the autumn statement last year.
In the May's lecture today as well.
In the May's lecture today, indeed she did. And, you know, don't forget Keir Starmer again. I mean, his 5 points. I mean, I watched his speech yesterday. His 5 points, you know, for bringing this... He was actually blaming the state of the nation on this Iran war. They've been to war for 3 weeks. How on earth can that have a massive impact?
There have been economic shocks, though, haven't
yes,
there?
but not to impact the cost of living. So when Trump comes out...
I don't know about that. You've got the Bank of England now. It was going to cut this month. It's now very much not
I
going
think
to
that's
cut,
more down to Rachel Reeves, to be honest with you,
Well,
Sebastian,
no,
and the
because of
absolute
international
dire
impacts.
straits. And I'm not just talking about the straits of Hormuz here. The straits, I mean, the dire straits of this country.
Speaking of Trump, when you are very rich and very powerful, as Trump was from birth, the word that you are very unused to hearing is no. And this is a man who is now being told no by the international community. That's even more the case when you're the US president. You don't hear that word very much at all. So he's throwing his toys out the pram. We know he has a puerile personality, and that's what we're seeing coming from him now. But what is good is that we're seeing strength from those European allies. We don't have to relitigate Brexit.
We're seeing quite a lot of strength from Donald Trump and what he's doing militarily, are we not?
We are. But to what end? You've still got a regime standing in
it's
Iran.
only been, as Claire says, we're only in week 3 here. This wasn't going to happen overnight.
But week 3 of more almost permanent bombardment, and you haven't seen a shift there. I think he thought this was going to be another
Got rid of quite a lot of people.
Venezuela.
Laranjani today, for example.
But the regime still stands. Whereas compare it to Venezuela, it was in, out, quick, and we never talked about it again. That was a very different thing, though, wasn't it? It was, but I don't think he realised the difference when he went into Iran.
Really?
I don't think so.
Okay, Claire?
I think he went into Iran as very much friend of Bibi Netanyahu. I think that Trump was on the back of Israel in this. And I think he thought that the rest of Europe would just go because that's what Trump thinks. Although he has said, hasn't he, that he doesn't actually need any other allies. But of course he does. He would say
together.
He doesn't, but of course he does. I mean, that's him. That's the big showman that he is. He doesn't need anybody, but in the reality is that he does. But my difficulty as well is the fact that J.D. Vance has kind of taken a step back, as has Marco Rubio. Why?
Well, maybe they don't agree with it either, Sebastian. What do you think? I mean, we've had Joe Kent today, the counter-terror chief. Is this... it's interesting, actually, because many people say that Trump has gone and done something that he said he wouldn't be a war president.
Yes.
And maybe that's part of it too.
That's it. And John Bolton as well, his former security advisor.
Yeah, but they hate each other.
The other day, yes, true, but he said that this is a choice, and I do think he's right. I do think it was a choice, and he's increasingly isolated in Washington. But remember, this is also a man who has, 2.5 years left, and then he's out. And I think that's the most dangerous phase of a presidency for somebody who is incredibly unpredictable.
But I think it's interesting as well that Iran has capitulated in the fact that they have held the West economically responsible, and they've been putting economic war, they've been dealing with us through economic sanctions more than military action, and I think that is key as well.
Trump's Perhaps they just realised they're beaten on the military side.
Gone on a big bluster, all guns blazing, and who likes war, for goodness sake? And they've now put feet on the ground. They're sending over Marines, are they not? In the US, they'll be there in about a week and a half. That for me is going to be
to the Straits of Hormuz, certainly, rather than in Iran. But nonetheless,
but it is
fascinating to see what has been happening. Let's just have a look at what Yvette Cooper has been saying, just on Claire's point, actually, about the global economy. This is the Foreign Secretary in Parliament earlier today.
In the last 7 days, we've seen Iran particularly focus their strikes on economic infrastructure in the Gulf. Oil fields in Saudi, ports in Oman, strikes against commercial ships from Thailand and Malta, threatened mines in the Strait of Hormuz. Iran is seeking to hijack the global economy, holding hostage supplies of oil, gas and fertiliser, affecting prices and supply chains across the globe and threatening the cost of living here at home, causing real worry for our constituents across the country.
Just to say, I'm just looking at some other polling that's asked the question. This is YouGov. Was the US right to take military action? 18% yes, 57% no. Do you support the UK joining offensive military action? 70% oppose in the UK, 17% for. So there's just some other polling from YouGov out as well. But there is a consistent trend here. On what Yvette Cooper said there, backing up your point, certainly, has the UK, do you think, any agency in this to actually get things back economically, Claire?
Well, no, I don't, because they've not managed to guarantee our domestic energy supplies either. You've got mad Ed Miliband. Yeah, go off and get your heat pump. At what cost?
And your warm beer.
Financial cost. And your warm beer, for goodness sake.
We'll come to that later.
Yeah. On Paddy's Day, a warm Guinness? I don't think so, Mr. Miliband.
But isn't this exactly the reason we need our energy independence? For situations like this. We saw it with Russia, and we're seeing it again.
Yes, but Ed Miliband and Keir Starmer don't want it.
Of course they do. That's exactly what Great British Energy is about.
It's all about renewables, for goodness sake,
Sebastian. Independent. That's the whole point. You can create your own wind energy here.
Look, we've got an issue now with fertilisers. We're supposed to be able to have, our own homegrown dairy and cattle and infrastructures there with the farmers to support us for food. We need our farmers. This is another nail in the coffin of
your
farmers.
Energy Secretary, what do you do?
Scrap net zero. Right?
Really?
Oh, absolutely.
But how do you tackle this problem? How do you become energy independent?
Get rid of those wind farms.
How will that help?
How would it help?
Yeah.
It would free up land with these monstrosities
offshore
that are
wind
up there.
farms.
No, get rid of. They don't work.
It's not exactly prime real estate, is it?
It doesn't work.
What would you do instead? What would you do instead?
Scrap net zero.
No. What would you do? Not what would you scrap. No, what would you do?
Cut down a load of trees and burn them.
And that's a sustainable energy strategy.
I'm not a geophysicist, nor am I a chemist, nor am I an energy specialist, Sebastian. However, I am I am a paying member of the public of energy bills that are humongous, and I don't like being told what I can buy, what I can't burn, where I can go, what I can't do, and I don't like the fact our farmers are being held to account for some fatuous useless bit of legislation.
What is your view on why net zero is a good idea, Sebastian?
I accept it's expensive to start with, but the reason it's a good idea is because we can generate that energy at home. Wind, solar, all of that
Wind doesn't always blow, sun doesn't always shine.
Doesn't always blow, but the amount of our energy supply that is being created by renewables is going up. And it means we can create it ourselves. We can create it cheaply, which is a critical factor in all of this.
We can't create it cheaply.
Of course we can.
One thing we could do reasonably cheaply is extract lots of oil and gas, which is in the North Sea.
No, we can't. No, we can't, because oil, as we've seen, is set on a global price. It trades on a market. It gets sold at that price.
Isn't having more British oil a good idea?
It doesn't make a difference. It gets sold at the global price. It's not cheaper just because it's British.
It would still be there, though, and it would still create many, many jobs.
So we wouldn't have to ration
no,
things because the commodity is there. It's basic supply and demand.
A, it's going to run out in about 50 years, so it's not a long-term solution. B, yes, I accept it should be part of our mix, but a decreasing part of it. Okay. C, you're selling it at a very expensive price, so it's not cheaper. And D, the reason our energy bills are so high is because of marginal pricing, which means that the most expensive part of the mix is what dictates the price for everything. Oil is expensive.
Let's take the oil example. Let's say there's 50 years of oil left. Net zero, getting in on the ground floor, is expensive. We agree with we all agree on that because it is true. Surely, when you have the kind of technologies like heat pumps getting smaller and smaller and smaller, for example, I've heard about a heat pump that can be in someone's flat, for example, which is necessity proving the mother of invention. Wouldn't it make more sense to wait, see where the technology goes, rather than buying, iPhone version 1, wait to version 17, get in there and see the technology that actually works, and rely on the oil, or at least use the oil that's there for the next, let's say, 30 or 40 years, rather than saying we're going to change our whole economy, we're going to change our whole energy system for net zero.
Why not do both? That technology is developing.
It's really expensive.
Well, that's it. But there are some people who want it and can afford it, and let's let them do that because they want to make that choice.
But we're subsidising it as well.
Yes, and that's important too because it is expensive. But look, if you ask me honestly, will you go out tomorrow and buy a heat pump? Of course I won't. It's really expensive. But will I do it in 10 years when the prices have fallen and I need a new boiler? I probably will. There's a time for everybody where they feel comfortable to be able to make that contribution.
Net zero is a bit of a white elephant, to be honest with you. I really, really do, because the size of this country is absolutely minuscule, and unless the likes of China, India, Russia get on board with it as well.
United States.
It's not. I do say it, and I say it as a kid would say with my chest. No, let me finish, please, because I think it's really important that everyone, we should not be marginalised as a country. We should not be dictated to that we have to have this drive to net zero when the other major players are making no difference at all to the size of. Remember we had the ozone layer, all that chat. Remember we had acid rain. Remember we had everything else. Where is it now?
So that logic is a trap, because if you look at the number of countries like us that make up about 1 or 2% of emissions and you add them up, it's above 30%. It's somewhere between 30 and 40%. That's a big chunk of the world. If we all made that decision, that would be a massive blow in our journey to net zero.
Well, I don't really care about other countries. I care about my country, and I care about the taxation that I pay.
But this is a global problem, and it needs a global effort, and we all have to play our part, however small we are.
Okay, lots to discuss next. We haven't even got to warm beer or indeed Trump's views on the BBC, which we'll come to in a minute. A little bit of reaction from Ellie. Says, good evening, Peter. It's good to see Claire back on Talk. It's been far too long. I don't always agree with her, but she always makes her case very well. And Bob in Cheltenham says that he's delighted to see Claire back, and of course a fan of Sebastian too, holding his own apparently, so thank you to Bob for that. Lots to discuss. Gary says, great to see Claire Muldoon with her usual voice of reason and common sense, so there we are.
Isn't that lovely?
Yes,
Ellie,
indeed.
Gary and Bob, thank you very, very much.
Well, indeed. Lots of suggestions on what the show should be called. I'm going to a big meeting tomorrow with the people behind the scenes. They're called Creative. I love that. What do? I'm creative. So I'm going to see them about what the show should be called, because we've been doing this now for 2.5 weeks. Lots of suggestions. Nicola in Bromsgrove, I like this one, Nicola. The Cardwell Conversation. There we are. Joe in Shrewsbury, how about Player Cardwell? That's the name of your show. To use one's resources in the most effective manner. Joanna in Salisbury says, Cardi P clarifies, you do make politics easy for us mere mortals to understand in depth. Well, that's very, very kind. Thank you. Cardwell's Cards on the Tables, Peter's Political Parlour, Politics with Peter, says Ruth. Go.
Claire and Peter's show.
Very good. Declare your interest, Claire. Declare your interest. Lots to discuss in just a minute with Sebastian, Claire and me on the debate desk. If you want to get your voice on the air, maybe have a chat with them. 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, thank you everybody who has been in touch. Talking about Donald Trump and what the president has been saying, he's been criticising the BBC as well from the White House. There is, of course, this big case that is happening in Florida. He is happy to and wants to sue the BBC for many billions of dollars, of pounds, but the BBC trying to get it thrown out. This is what the president said.
BBC took it a step further. They actually they put words in my mouth and I said some pretty bad things. And I didn't say them. It was AI generated. And I said, I never said that. In fact, some of my people said, wow, that was pretty bad stuff you said. I said, what did I say? You know, I'm pretty good at this stuff. I mean, if you can go through years of these press conferences and you're a popular president of the United States that won in a landslide, that won all 7 swing states, that got record numbers of votes, I mean, so I guess I'm okay at this stuff. I said, I never said that. And then we found out it was AI generated. And they admit they made a mistake. BBC. But I watched them this morning for some crazy reason, and it was so inaccurate. Their reporting of the war was unbelievable. We have decimated that country. And if you watch BBC, it's almost like they're fighting us to a draw. They're not fighting us to a draw. It was very inaccurate news.
Well, it wasn't AI generated. It was a doctored clip. It absolutely shouldn't have been broadcast, but it was a doctored clip that a cut and shot, as we call it in broadcasting, where they put together 2 clips to put them together in a sequence. What do you make about? Maybe it's my microphone. Somebody's microphone is. Is it mine? Okay, we'll sort that out. The sound people behind the scenes are going to sort it out. I'm going to try to stay as still as possible. What do you make of what President Trump said there on this court case?
Oh, it's classic Trump, isn't it? It's exhausting. I mean, look, it has such a chilling effect on free speech, doesn't it? When the leader of the free world comes after one of the biggest broadcasters in the world and tries to sue them for billions of pounds, because at the end of the day, it's going to be us paying.
Maybe they should have just told the truth in the first place.
Well, look, it was a mess up. I completely...
It's indefensible, Sebastian.
Yes, sure, but should you be sued for billions of pounds as a result? That seems like a disproportionate response.
Look, he's a businessman. You know, what would we have thought if he didn't come out and say anything like that? And I really don't.
Be quite pleased.
What he's done in the past is, I am just about to change my microphone, by the way, guys. But what he's done in the past is he is sued for large amounts of money, but got a smaller amount in damages from other media companies.
I don't think he ever actually wanted to sue the BBC, to be honest with you. I think it was all bluster. and shooting from the hip, a la Trump, and what Trump actually does always. And I think, you know, the BBC are starting now, they think he's weakened because the American people don't want this war. Clearly, the government polls here would suggest that the Britons don't want to be dragged into this war. So now he's like, gosh, you know, what am I going to do now? So the BBC, I think, had wind in their sail, were a bit courageous and said, we're not having it. Drop the claim.
Well, they've also taken some legal advice and they're rejecting the jurisdiction this is going to be fought in Florida, and they're saying this was never aired in Florida. It was on iPlayer, which you can't watch in America. But doesn't it have all of the parts of a classic Trump story?
It does.
You've
no, it
got
absolutely
a big
does.
sum of money. You're going to have a deadline looming at some point. It's all
Sebastian,
the things he loves.
as a British broadcaster, the official British broadcaster, they should not have done what they did.
No,
and
we
I
could
think
agree on
that
that
was an attack on his free speech.
Let's talk about Trump with I've got my new microphone on now. Hopefully it will work well and there won't be that scratchy sound. Apologies to people who have been noticing that. Of course, it's frustrating for us as well. Hopefully you can hear me clearly now. Michael's in Hertfordshire and has given me a ring at 0344 499 1000. Michael, you're on with me, but also with Claire Muldoon and Sebastian Salek. What is your point this evening? What would you like to say?
Good evening. I would just like to say that the green is the correct way to go. But if you haven't got the facilities to replace it, then the North Sea oil is the place to go for gas and oil. Silly Bang keeps saying it will be the same price. But what he's not saying is it's a bit nearer to get it in the North Sea than we would from other places. And it's absolutely ridiculous. And as far as us getting involved in the war, how can we not help our allies? Here everyone's saying it's going to affect the prices at home. And on the other hand, we won't do anything to help.
Okay.
He's not asking us to send the whole army in. He's asking for just a little bit of help from the whole of Europe.
Michael,
how does Iran see this? They'll see this as weakness.
Okay.
And that's no good for anybody. We should be strong, we should be united, and let Iran know we're together.
Michael, just stay where you are just for the minute. I'm going to take your call down just for a second. I'm going to get some thoughts from Claire and from Sebastian. I promise you I'll come back to you in a minute. Claire, what do you make of what Michael said there?
Well, I mean, I agree to a certain extent that we should, you know, understand that America has been an ally of us. But I think history will show us that. And history, yes, historically, yes, we have been. These are different times. These are completely and utterly different times. But I, for one, am standing with the Iranian women that, you know, cannot not wear the hijab outside. There's 96 million people in Iran, half of which we assume are women. There are currently public executions in Iran. The temperature gauge for me was when the Iranian football team went to Australia and those girls were sad and frightened to go home. Some of them were allowed to stay, and others went home, and they were so frightened. They went home for fear of ramification for their families.
And we've got to remember the human rights element to all of this.
Absolutely.
What would you say to Michael?
I want to pick up on the great irony of Trump invoking Churchill in all of this, in a way to frame Starmer as being some kind of a coward. Now, if you think back to the Second World War, our finest hour, you see a very strategic statesman who didn't jump, who didn't invade France when the Americans wanted him to, who held off and waited until he had a rationale and he had the resources. And right now, I don't think we've got the resources and I don't think we've got a rationale.
Michael, what do you make of what Claire and Sebastian have said there?
We haven't got the facilities that he's talking about. We're not talking about sending a whole army in, as I've said. We're talking about not talking against them, about united on the face of things. That's all he's asking, really. And as I said before, it will be a sign of weakness.
Okay.
They killed 30,000 of their own people. And if they think, for example, Israel wasn't there, you don't think they'll start with other countries?
Yeah.
Israel was just an excuse. They would start every country near them. And that's what they're doing.
Michael, what if Starmer was asked to put our soldiers on the ground out in Iran? What would you say to that?
He's not being asked.
No, if he were.
There's no if. He's not being asked. Let's look at reality. Not look what might be. Look what he's asking for.
Well, Michael, we've already seen several American soldiers come home in body bags.
United Europe to help the allies.
Okay, hold on a second. Sebastian, just make that point again.
We've already seen several American soldiers, Michael, come home in body bags, so the fatalities are already happening.
did you think there was none going to happen? 30,000
each one is a tragedy.
People.
Okay.
Look how many wars they've started in other countries.
Okay.
Look who they've used to attack.
Well, you're absolutely right. Iran, of course, using so many proxies, Hezbollah, Hamas and others. Michael, the Houthi rebels in Yemen too. Michael, thanks for your points there. That's Michael in Hertfordshire. There's two big topics I want to talk about after the break, actually. Anti-Jewish hate crimes, half as likely to be prosecuted as those against Muslims. I also want to talk about Ed Miliband and warm beer. But just before we go to the break, Claire, I know you've been following the controversy in Scotland about assisted dying. Just tell us your impressions of this. I know you've very strong faith and you have some thoughts that are, of course, associated with that.
Yep, so at 10 p.m. tonight, the MSPs will vote in Holyrood for the assisted dying bill to go through or not go through. And it's rather more intense than the one that's been mooted and mooted in the Lords at the moment for England and Wales, because what it will do in Scotland will actually force medical practitioners to end someone's life if they have decided that's the route for them. In England and Wales, it will be only if the medical practitioner will have the choice of whether or not to do it. And also in Scotland, if it does go through, there will be a lot of religious hospices that will need to close down because they will not be able to go back on the law, and they will not be able to make any change to that, and they will have no autonomy over who does or who does not actually make the final dose, the lethal dose. And we need to bear in mind as well that the Council of Psychiatrists and doctors in Scotland have all said, we do not want this to happen. It must not happen for a myriad of reasons, not necessarily faith-based, because mine are mostly faith-based, because I think life is sanctity is paramount, and I think laws ought to be there to protect the most vulnerable in society. And I don't think those that are living in poverty, those that might be disabled, or those that just think they might be a burden to their families, then I don't think it's a free vote, and I don't think it's a freedom of autonomy to exercise their right. It'll be taken away from them.
You could have a very, very different system in different parts of the British Isles here, especially because the assisted dying bill for England and Wales seems to be something that's not going to succeed if the political versions of what I've been told essentially come to pass. Sebastian, where do you stand on this issue, and what do you think? Yeah,
I mean, the sense is very much that it's being kicked into the long grass in England and Wales. I mean, look, it's such a difficult issue, and I think I probably would have supported the bill in England and Wales because of the guardrails, because of the issues that you mentioned, Claire, where a doctor doesn't have to do this, has to consent to going through with the process. But what you describe in the Scottish bill sounds a lot more draconian, and I certainly wouldn't be supporting that.
We'll watch with interest what happens in Scotland. Perhaps we'll talk about it more on the programme tomorrow. Lots more to discuss with Sebastian and with Claire. Get your comments in too, 0344 499 1000. Terry in Slough says, anyone with an ounce of common sense knows that this idiotic rush to net zero will be disastrous for the country, but there seems to be a lack of common sense in this useless and incompetent Labour government, says Terry. And lots more suggestions for the name of the show, The Cat's Pyjamas, says Donna in Newcastle under Lyme. And Jess in Dover says it should simply be called Talk Tonight. Some good suggestions there. Keep them coming in. 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
conflict breaks out anywhere in the world, it has consequences here at home. Talk War is your definitive national security briefing. From the conflict in Ukraine to the tensions in Gaza and the latest escalation with Iran, this is where you'll find comprehensive comment and expert analysis with multiple updates throughout the day. The Talk War podcast from Talk, available on the Talk app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, thank you to everybody who has been in touch. We're on the debate desk with Claire Muldoon and Sebastian Salek. A really interesting story today from the Jewish Chronicle. They've done a big Freedom of Information request to 35 of the 43 police forces in England and Wales, and some of the statistics are really quite shocking in this. Hate crimes targeting the Muslim community are nearly twice as likely to result in prosecution as anti-Semitic offences. These are official figures. These are the figures from those different police forces, the ones who responded in time. In the 12 months to March 2025, 6.7% of alleged offences targeting Muslims resulted in a charge or summons, equivalent to 1 in 15 offences recorded by police, according to this Home Office data. Yet just 3.8% of alleged anti-Semitic hate crimes in the same period resulted in such action, about 1 in 26 offences. And we know, of course, the Jewish community are far more proportionately affected by hate crime because they're a much smaller community. For both groups, the figure falls below the overall proportion of racially or religiously aggravated offences that resulted in a charge or summons the previous year, which stood at 9%. One of my things that has really annoyed me last year was when the anti-Semitic scumbag Pascal Robinson-Foster shouted death to the IDF at Glastonbury. He was not prosecuted. Avon and Somerset Police took nearly 6 months, along with the Crown Prosecution Service, to make that decision, or more accurately, not make that decision. When these statistics come out, Claire, this appears to me anyway to be clear evidence of two-tier justice. What's your thought?
Well, it is, but those statistics, for me, when I read them, I find it difficult to get relativity when I read them. I don't know if you find the same. I would say racial intolerance is abhorrent at any level, whether or not you're a Christian, whether or not you're a Muslim, whether or not you're a Sikh, Hindu, or a Jew. And I think to look at statistics like that, it's incredibly difficult to try and tease out actually where the system is going wrong. Is it the case that they're not being reported? Is it the case?
That's part of it.
I think that is a huge part of it, and therefore they will go untested. And then the ones that are reported, why then are the police and the CPS not taking due steps to actually take care of it? Is it because the threshold is so high for different religions? I don't know. I really don't know what the answer is, Peter. Okay. And I would prefer it if it was all the same for everybody.
Of course.
And you're talking of someone who grew up in Glasgow with Rangers and Celtic, and the sectarianism there.
Yeah. Well, we're both all too familiar with that. Sebastian, your thoughts on this?
Do you know what, Claire? I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
What was most striking about all of this was that both of them fall below the 9%, which is the proportion of all racially and religiously aggravated offences. So there's clearly a failure somewhere. Reading through it, the Crown Prosecution Service was saying that in order to make a prosecution, you need a file of evidence, and often they don't have that, and therefore they can't bring it, and it fails, and it ends up not being
and what I wouldn't want is to say, right, well, we're going to do the correction and say, well, we haven't got enough evidence, but we're going to prosecute it anyway, and we need to get that. It just should all be equal. It isn't, unfortunately. As we know, and as you've pointed out, Claire. Now then, let's talk about, we'll talk more about that later on in the programme, by the way. Let's talk about Ed Miliband. who has said that we should serve warmer beer to save on bills. He's launched an energy advice tool for hospitality businesses aimed at helping them cut costs. Pubs should serve warmer beer, turn off ovens to save money on their energy bills. The tool encourages firms to reduce unnecessary electricity by turning off bottle fridges overnight and to monitor hotspots such as extraction systems, ovens and lamps. Claire.
What an absolute moron. Ed Rubberband. He is ridiculous. The Labour Party have already put the nails in the head, put the nails in the coffin of so much of our hospitality industry. One pub a day is closing due to their ridiculous taxation and, you know, everything else that they throw at them. It's ridiculous. They just cannot survive. And now what they're doing, they're infantilising the hospitality industry. Oh no, you need to turn that off, turn that switch off, turn that down. Serve warm beer.
Crazy.
Get out of here.
I'm going to have to.
Are you a beer drinker?
Do you know what? I've been a beer drinker for about the last 6 months, and my God, it's a slippery slope. There's a lot out there, you know. It really makes itself known.
Do you drink it warm, Sebastian?
No, I don't. A warm cider I can do. A warm beer I can't.
Warm cider, really?
Yeah.
Well, I've had like hot cider at Christmas.
Yeah, or like a nice
You
flat
don't even
warm
drink.
cider.
Well, previously. Yes.
In another life.
But
well,
you know what?
8 years ago. Yeah.
This is more a story about comms than it is about anything else, because Ed Miliband isn't walking around telling pubs to serve warm beer. He's paid for a tool that's come with this advice, and that's what's come out of it.
I'll
and
tell
the
you,
cheeky
he's a
Telegraph has jumped on top of it. And that's what's going on.
But he needs to take responsibility. Before we go, he's talked about these hotspots, extraction systems. Do you want to hear my impression of an extractor fan?
Go on.
I used to like tractors.
Oh, do it.
No, I used to like tractors. I'm an ex-tractor fan.
Hey!
There we go. Claire's just giving me that look that says, I've come back, I'm in the studio, maybe that was
For
the wrong.
this.
Maybe that was the wrong.
This is how you get your own show in this place.
For this.
That's it. Thank you both very much indeed.
Good to
Claire Muldoon, returning in a blaze of glory to talk, the broadcaster. Great to see you, and Sebastian Salek, the Labour councillor and commentator. What do you think about what they said? 0344 499 1000. Lots of suggestions for the name as well. Luna the dog from Staffordshire, who apparently has opposable thumbs, said Peter's Hot Talk. I'm not sure. Ring me for a live chat. And Leslie says, how about conversations with Peter Cardwell and guests? Gillian Worthing says the Cardi P connection. And Peter Straight Talking says Keith. Peter's People says Stephen in London. Lots of different suggestions, so thank you. And Dan and Ken says, just call the show Cardi P the place to be. There we are. Well, we're going to talk more in just a second. Rear Admiral Mike Hewitt will join us on what Trump has been saying. We'll talk about the King's visit too, and what Emily Thornberry, who's chairwoman of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, she says that perhaps they should postpone the state visit. This is the one going across the Atlantic to America after Donald Trump, of course, was here a few months ago. So much to discuss on all of this. Let me know your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
It's just gone 8 o'clock. This is Talk. Thank you so much for your company. So much to discuss this evening, including what Sebastian Salek and Claire Muldoon have been saying, but mainly what Donald Trump has been saying about Starmer. The relationship with the UK was the best until Keir came along. What do you think about that? We'll speak to Rear Admiral Mike Hewitt about that. Because there's so much to discuss about the US-UK relationship. We also will talk about Starmer must delay the King's US visit. That's what Emily Thornberry, who's the chairwoman of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, thinks. We'll talk about shoplifting and forcing corner shops to raise prices to pay for CCTV, and the police chiefs pledging an era of openness to the public to combat misinformation. They wanted the police to talk much more to journalists. That's gone in cycles, certainly over the past few years. We'll also talk about Ed Miliband serving warmer beer. Save on bills by serving warmer beer. Do you want warmer beer? I'm not a beer drinker, but I certainly don't want it to be warm for all my friends who do drink it. In fact, I'm not a drinker of any alcohol, but nonetheless, I want people on a nice sunny day. I think it was 14 degrees here in London. Reasonably bright and sunny day. I certainly want people to enjoy their beers and not do what Ed Miliband says. So much to discuss. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me at 72222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. Send me a voice note, less than a minute, please. Anytime between now and 10, we'll play that out. 0344 499 1000. Same number for phone calls, same number for sending me a WhatsApp text message. And we are, of course, asking what we should call the show. I'm meant to be having a meeting tomorrow with the creative team to have a chat about that. What do you think we should call the show? It's 2.5 weeks old with me, my feet under the table, and whatever you think, you let me know. So much to discuss between now and 10. Stay with us here on Talk. Thank you to Tasha in Switzerland, who says I should be in prison because of the joke I told before the break. Certainly the team behind the glass were unimpressed by my joke about Extractor fans. Stephen in Belfast says, a shame your two guests were so inarticulate over such an important issue of net zero. It needs to be banned now, says Stephen. And Phil in Portsmouth says, your show goes out when most people are at home and have had their tea, put their feet up, put the telly on, and then chill and chat. So why not call it Chill and Chat with Peter Cardwell, says Phil in Portsmouth. All ideas gratefully received. Let's talk now about America and about the relationship we have with them. In fact, the next couple of things we're going to talk about are about America, because we have two things that have happened. One, Emily Thornberry has said that Starmer has to delay the King's US visit, but the President himself, who would be receiving the King, says the relationship was really, really good until Keir Starmer came along. Let's have a look at what he said in the White House today, with, embarrassingly, the Irish Prime Minister, the Taoiseach, Micheál Martin, sitting beside him in the Oval Office. This is what happened.
We have a tremendous long-term relationship with the UK. I mean, people would say it's the best. I don't want to get into that, but we've had, it was the longest, the oldest, should be the best. Always was the best until Keir came along, and now, and I like him. He's a nice man. He says everything beautiful. He's a very nice man with a beautiful family. Everything's perfect, but he doesn't produce. And I think it's very inexpensive. I just said, you don't have to send me aircraft carriers. Send me a couple of minesweepers. We don't need your aircraft carriers. But even the aircraft carriers, he would only send them after we essentially won. I mean, he's sending them when there are no planes left, when the missiles are down to 8%.
Well, let's speak to Rear Admiral Mike Hewitt now. He's a former Pentagon official and former US Navy officer. Mike, thank you for joining us this evening here in the UK. And there's a lot in this from President Trump. The special relationship seems to be in serious jeopardy tonight. Can that all be laid at the door of Keir Starmer? What do you think of what the Prime Minister's reaction will be, and indeed just on its own what the President has said?
Well, thank you for having me, Peter. The first thing I'll say is, having served in NATO capacity for 30 years, I'm the least bit concerned that the special relationship will die over these presidents and this prime minister. What you're hearing from President Trump is a reaction to the transaction of the war in Iran. And unfortunately, I think where the prime minister is masking his desire not to support the war is really the inability to support the war. I think for the last 30 years, I've joined a chorus of flag and general officers in the UK admonishing the lack of defense budget and the lack of readiness by the UK military. The ability to project power in the maritime domain has been lost. And so I think this is as much an obituary of the UK military as it is their ability to support that. That being said, I'm not concerned about the special relationship. It will continue to be the most important relationship that we have militarily, geopolitically. And I think once we get through this, I think we'll be looking at the bright side of the future. But the one thing I will say, in my opinion, the war is basically over. The military conflict from the air, from the sea has been won. We're now talking about keeping commerce open through international waters that's being held hostage by a belligerent set of mullahs. So that's really what President Trump is frustrated by, is not understanding that this is not about the conflict. This is about the oil that the UK needs more than the US.
There is so much in what you've just said there that I want to unpack and ask you further questions about. I'm not sure the time slot we have is actually going to be sufficient for that. Can you just go back a bit and tell me, first of all, your thoughts on, you said this is a sort of obituary for the last 30 years of the UK military. You've seen it up close. You've been dealing with the UK through NATO. You've seen the hardware that's there. Why has it gone so wrong, do you think, when it comes to our military capacity here in the UK, especially as, you know, it was farcical in regard to HMS Dragon not leaving the port. There are all these sorts of details about not being able to use some of our hardware in warm water in the Strait of Hormuz, for example. There have been many other countries that clearly have a much greater military capacity, and I'm sure you're familiar with the political row that happened a few months ago about a £28 billion black hole in our finances for the military here.
Yeah, it's. I think living off the peace dividend from the end of the Cold War, the UK has never really got its legs under it again, and recognizing that you're a vital national power in the maritime domain. It's critically important to be able to project power, not just defend your shores. And I think a lot of the military budget was living off the peace dividend or living off the US support in Europe. And every decision from going with a HMS Prince of Wales non-nuclear aircraft carrier, building your entire military organization around support from your allies, you really don't have a sovereign military any longer, which is fine, but you need to partner with allies such as America. And again, I think the HMS Dragon was a real eye-opener, because what you saw at the leadership level was a lack of commitment or strategic clarity, and then realizing that maybe the Poles tell us we should get the HMS Dragon underway to protect Cyprus, when in fact the Greeks and the French and others had already arrived to protect that port. And then your head of defense kind of laboring over whether we need to even send a ship at all. I think that was indicative of the challenges that the UK is facing. And again, the HMS Dragon, I give the crew tremendous credit for getting underway in 6 days. But what ended up happening was they had to do readiness and operational preparation before they could go into the Eastern Mediterranean. So what was perceived as a lack of being able to get underway really was a lack of readiness of the people and the crew. So right now, what the US has learned is you have to maintain forward presence in your Navy. Otherwise, you can't just turn it on a switch and get into the fight. If anything, the UK comes away from this lesson is that you need to go back to your first principles of naval warfare, power projection, a home and abroad, and make sure that you are aligned with the national interests of your country. And I certainly don't believe that's where we are right now.
Really interesting to hear that. I just want to play another clip now. This is the Foreign Secretary of this country, Yvette Cooper, talking in Parliament today about how the UK is being affected economically and what Iran, she thinks, is trying to do. And I want to get your, in the context of what you said a few minutes ago, Mike, I just want to get your response to this. Let's hear from Yvette Cooper.
In the last 7 days, we've seen Iran particularly focus their strikes on economic infrastructure in the Gulf. Oil fields in Saudi, ports in Oman, strikes against commercial ships from Thailand and Malta, threatened mines in the Strait of Hormuz. Iran is seeking to hijack the global economy, holding hostage supplies of oil, gas and fertiliser, affecting prices and supply chains across the globe and threatening the cost of living here at home, causing real worry for our constituents across the country.
What do you make of what our Foreign Secretary has said here in the UK, Mike?
Well, I think she's got it exactly right. That the mullahs are trying to win this war through economic influence, through driving up the price of oil, and really challenging the wherewithal of the government to recognize them for who they are. They're a terrorist organization. The IRGC is not a first-rate navy. They're a bunch of thugs and terrorists. So is Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis. And I think what President Trump has done is eliminate their nuclear program, which was a very bipartisan decision that Iran may never have a weapon. But people forget why we had to take out that program, because of the Iran nuclear deal that was fashioned 12 years ago. And so what we're dealing with now, I believe, is a massive amount of complacency around Iran for the last 40 years, to be honest with you. And now it's all come to roost. And what President Trump has done is really what everyone on the world stage knew needed to be done. But what's most important right now, we have won the military conflict. Iran does not have a nuclear program any longer. Their ability to wage war and project power is all but eliminated. What we're dealing with now is a desperate set of mullahs who are trying to create economic chaos on the global stage as a way to get countries such as the UK and others to perhaps capitulate to their desire to maintain the regime. This is all about regime protection. And the Iranian people, they don't support this regime. They want a free economics. They want a relationship with the international community. And I think what tipped all this for President Trump was in the negotiations with the Iranians in Oman, he offered them a free nuclear program. He offered them that we would build their nuclear program, we would provide the fuel, and we would ensure that they are stable and secure economically through nuclear power. And they rejected that offer. So what you're dealing with is a group that basically said, we are going to get to a nuclear weapon. And everybody has forgotten that over the last 3 weeks. I think we've made tremendous progress in this conflict. And now it's time for our allies to step up and help us keep the flow of commerce open in the Straits of Hormuz.
Tell me what your thoughts are about Joe Kent, the director of the National Counter-Terrorism Centre. He announced that he is resigning over the war in Iran. It's been called a stunning defection that shows how President Trump's decision to strike Iran has divided some of the most loyal corners of his administration. He has written, Joe Kent, "I cannot in good conscience support the ongoing war in Iran." He said, until July of 2025, he understood the wars in the Middle East were a trap that robbed America of the precious lives of our patriots and depleted the wealth and prosperity of our nation. He has certainly been making the news today. What do you make of this?
Well, I disagree with him wholeheartedly on his assessment, and particularly coming from his position as the head of the National Counterterrorism Center. Above all people, he should understand that Iran, going back to building explosive form penetrators and killing thousands of Americans in the war on Iraq, which was a war on terror, and then recognizing that when Mohammed bin Salman and Netanyahu were reaching out to shake hands back in September of 23, that's when Hamas attacked Israel. So this is all about terrorism and chaos and trying to get countries to capitulate to the fanatics. And I think he's made a huge mistake, but frankly, maybe he was the wrong guy for that job anyway. And it's time to bring in somebody that understands the importance of counterterrorism.
Mike, it is really interesting to talk to you. It's the first time I've interviewed you, but I really hope it isn't the last, because everything you've said, I may not agree with all of it, but has absolutely struck a chord. Superb analysis there. So thank you to Rear Admiral Mike Hewitt, who's a former Pentagon official and ex-US Navy officer. What do you think about what he said? 0344 499 1000. Let's take a call from Joan in Sunderland, who has some thoughts on what's been going on. Joan, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Well, I just like to agree with some of the things that gentleman has to say. Donald Trump for a while has been saying that America is not prepared to bankroll NATO and EU countries regarding defence anymore. And it's about time that they stepped up to the plate and put more money into defence. We have realised now, when we saw the debacle with one ship that took 8 days to put to sea to defend Cyprus, it's an absolute disgrace. We spend £55 billion on our military, £300 billion on our benefits, and Lord knows how many billions we spend on illegal immigrants. It's just absolutely ridiculous. We cannot defend ourselves, and it's not just this government, prior governments, but this one is an absolute disgrace. Starmer is an absolute disgrace. He can't even defend the people who live in this country because he will not do anything about closing borders to illegal immigrants. He's just a disgrace. He's not interested in any way defending the people of this country. And as regards defence, let's hope we never ever need to rely on America again.
Joan,
if they turn round and say no, we've got no one else to blame but ourselves.
Joan, thank you for your thoughts. Really appreciate that. What do you think about what Joan said? 0344 499 1000. Paul in Oxford has been in touch on a different aspect about Ed Miliband. He says, seriously, drinking warm beer to save the planet? You couldn't make it up. He wants to be our next Prime Minister. This is one of the another big debate, arguably slightly less serious than war in Iran, that we have been talking about this evening. I know Anne in Somerset has some thoughts on this. Anne, you're very welcome. Somerset, of course, knows quite a lot about cider, but you know about beer too, Anne. So what's your take on all of this?
Well, I absolutely hate any cold drink.
Okay. What about milk? Do you hate cold milk?
Listen, I don't drink milk. Everything I drink is without milk.
Okay.
But I sound a bit like a fraud because I don't drink that much. I never have done. But I do like a brown ale.
Right.
But I don't like it cold. And my husband is exactly the same. If we go out anywhere, he never, ever asks for cold beer. It's always, warm beer.
I must honestly say, Anne, I don't drink beer. In fact, I haven't really been drinking. Well, in fact, I haven't been drinking for nearly 8 years now. I was never a beer drinker. In fact, I think I've maybe only ever had a couple of pints of beer in my life, even when I was a drinker, and believe me, I could put it away. But, I mean, lots of people like a cold beer, but is it the beer itself? Is it the brown ale that needs to be a bit warmer so it tastes better?
Well, if you think about it, our ancestors never had cold drinks, did they? It was always warm beer or cider. Yeah. And they used to warm their drinks on the fire, didn't they? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But then I suppose if you have, 60 or 70 years ago, people didn't have showers, but I would, the progress means that you can have a nice hot shower rather than a cold one, or have a bath once a week. I mean, having ice or having cold drinks, maybe people like them more?
Well, listen, if you try drinking any drink with its room temperature, you can taste it. If you chill it, you take away that taste. If you have anything too hot, you take away that taste. Even my food, I don't like piping hot food. I just like it warm because you can taste it better. You know, these people that eat all these very hot foods, curries and things.
Yes.
Well, they can't taste what they're eating because it's just too hot. It burns your taste buds. But really, have a go at trying. People that are beer drinkers or cider drinkers or even wine drinkers, just try it.
Well, it's interesting. With wine's a different one because I know people like red wine at room temperature, but usually white wine colder. I must say I would have sort of ascribed to that when I was a drinker. Certainly, I would say my drink of choice, although, Anne, I'm going to be honest with you, I'm on, I think it's day 28 now of Lent out of 44, and I'm off Diet Coke for Lent. And
that's actually good because you know what? Diet Coke is not good for you.
Everybody says that, but I really miss it, Anne. It's my last remaining vice. I don't drink. I don't smoke. I have a very boring love life. I mean, there's very little to report apart when it comes to kind of vices. I don't do drugs. I don't do anything like that. So Diet Coke is the one for me.
Well, why don't you drink my favourite drink, which is Fever Tree? Or I shouldn't advertise.
That's okay. That's all right. It doesn't matter. It's okay. Fever Tree. Okay. So which one do you like?
Tonic. I don't mind any of them because they haven't got this saccharine and stuff in it, which is really bad for you.
Okay.
That's why you shouldn't drink Diet Coke. You're better off drinking ordinary Coke. It's so bad for you.
Okay. Well, Anne, I'd love to say that on Good Friday when Lent ends, some people do it to the Sunday, but I will be doing it to Good Friday, that I won't be having a can of Diet Coke, but I'm afraid I absolutely will. But fascinating to talk to you, Anne.
Happy St. Patrick's Day, by the way.
Thank you very much.
You are our family's favourite. So.
You're very kind, Anne. Thank you. And perhaps we'll have a warm beer together sometime. I can have a non-alcoholic one. I have had a Guinness Zero actually, which was sort of okay, but I'm not really a Guinness fan. Anne in Somerset there. Thank you. What do you make of what Anne said? What do you make of what we've been saying about Trump and Iran? There's lots to talk about, and certainly the King's US visit is something that the chairwoman of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, Emily Thornberry, has been saying maybe we should think about again. What do you think about that? Loads to discuss between now and 10. 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
conflict breaks out anywhere in the world, it has consequences here at home. Talk War is your definitive national security briefing. From the conflict in Ukraine to the tensions in Gaza and the latest escalation with Iran, this is where you'll find comprehensive comment and expert analysis with multiple updates throughout the day. The Talk War podcast from Talk, available on the Talk app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thanks everybody who has been in touch, and especially about drinks as well. Where was that one? It's disappeared from my screen now, from someone saying that drinks need to be cooled, otherwise they're insipid. Thank you to Luke. Lukewarm drinks are insipid, says Pete. I quite like a lukewarm glass of milk, weirdly. I don't like a really, really cold glass of milk. I'm getting some evils through the glass here from the people behind the glass here. Margaret in Birmingham says, Joan is brilliant. I agree with everything she said. Joan speaks for all of us, says Margaret in Birmingham. Lots more ideas about the name of the show. PC's World, that's a good one. Real Talk with Peter. Cardi calls it out. Alison Ali in County Antrim is simply saying she's enjoying the show, which is fantastic, and thank you for that. The Cardwell connection, says Pete. Pete's political pump up. Let's be sensible, says Carmen. The political showdown, says Liz as well. Cool for chats. Thank you to Mark in Selby, says that. Detoxing with Cardi P. Great job in the evening, says Crispy. I understand mass debates for a show name was unacceptable. How about detoxing with Cardi P? Martin in Litchfield says, how about the evening exchange? A suggestion for the debating style. That's an interesting one. I'm writing some of these down, so thank you. The meeting with Creative, though, is off tomorrow, because there is some breaking scheduling news, and that is that tomorrow Jeremy is off, so Ian Collins is moving from the afternoons to the morning. Ian Collins is doing the breakfast show. Julia will do 10 until 1 as normal. I'm going to be doing 1 till 4, so I'll be sitting in for Ian Collins. Kev will be here with Drive between 4 and 7, and as soon as I know who's doing between 7 and 10, I will let you know. But there has just been a little switcheroo, so I won't be here tomorrow night. I will be here tomorrow afternoon between 1 o'clock and 4 o'clock, filling in for Ian Collins, so we can see each other then, I hope. I want to talk about Emily Thornberry, who is the chairwoman of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, senior Labour MP. She has some interesting thoughts on the BBC this morning about whether the King should continue with his state visit to the United States. This is what Dame Emily said to the BBC this morning.
King's state visit to the US, which is supposed to be happening next month. Is it appropriate, do you think, for that to still go ahead, with relations being what they are and the situation being what it is?
I think the most important thing is that it will be going, if it was to go ahead next month, and I don't know, the dates haven't been confirmed, but if it was to go, everybody seems to think it's going to be next month, it would go ahead against a backdrop of a war, and that, I think, is quite difficult. And the last thing that we want to do is to have His Majesty's, their Majesties embarrassed.
Last thing is to have their Majesties embarrassed. Well, our royal correspondent Rupert Bell is with us now. Rupert, do you think they would be embarrassed to be there at the backdrop of war, or do you think that Donald Trump would actually say, he loves the royal family, of course, he loves our royal family, and that's the kind of trump card, pun intended, that we've pulled out at various points. This is the reciprocal journey, of course, across the Atlantic in a westerly direction because of Trump coming for his unprecedented second state visit. What would be the implications if it didn't go ahead, Rupert?
Well, it's a very complicated one because President Trump doesn't appear to have a filter. You saw how the Irish Taoiseach was having to deal with Starmer questions, and you'd have thought the King would probably be put in a position where he might be asked Starmer questions by President Trump, because clearly there is a breakdown in their relationship, and you can't sugarcoat it. I mean, Trump is going full bore with this, and the role of the royal family is the soft politics side. Now, could he smooth it over? But, 6 weeks down the line, or in the middle of April, where we don't know how this Iran issues, the war or whatever you want to call it, is going to play out over the next 6 weeks, 2 months, we just don't know. So it's a very complicated one. Remember, it's about celebrating the independence of the United States from Great Britain back in the day. So it's very complicated, and the royal family is about just quietly going about the business and sort of oiling the wheels of business and sort of what goes on by being the face of Britain. But for the royal, when they do these foreign visits, they come with the blessing of the Foreign Office and the government of the day. So it's not without complications. And I think Emily Thornberry was just voicing those concerns, because we do know that President Trump is not averse to embarrassing whoever is in the room with him. We've seen it all the time. And, President Keir Starmer had to go with a sort of with a groveling letter, say, please come for a state visit to try and keep the special relationship alive. At the moment, President Trump is searching for friends, but he's not frightened of also, it would seem, sort of saying what he thinks, because there doesn't appear to be a filter.
What do you think the likelihood is of this being called off? It's going to go ahead, isn't it?
Well, it would be a major surprise if it doesn't go ahead, because if you just look at the symbolism of the event, which is, as I say, celebrating the 250th year of independence from Great Britain, and Trump would like to make a great deal of it. But, he is struggling for friends, it would seem, at the moment within Europe. Britain, Keir Starmer has, played his card and said how he wants to play out events. And President Trump has been quite strong in his words.
Yeah.
So will it go ahead? I just don't know. Like most people with what's gone on in the last couple of weeks, we're just not sure where this is going.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure, let's be brutally honest, President Trump knows where it's going. If you read what we're led to believe from the runes coming out from within America, what's the end game here? And so that's what every political leader is trying to work out. How do we play someone who seems to, he gets on Air Force One and says something different every day. So for the royal family and their advisors and Keir Starmer, who will probably be either pull the plug or not on it, it will be a brave call. But if he does pull the plug on it, then the special relationship while President Trump is president, is certainly not going to be as strong as it once was.
Thank you very much, Rupert Bell, our royal correspondent there. Lots to chew over in all of that, and thank you to everybody who's sending in their messages. 0344 499 1000. Mary in County Down used to be a barmaid, and she says, when I worked in the bar at the Royal British Legion, many of the veterans preferred bottled beer at room temperature, especially Guinness. Older ex-Royal Navy men liked a bottle of beer along with a little glass of dark rum. They despised younger customers drinking pints of cold lager. Someone ordered an iced rum and blackcurrant. There was nearly a riot at one point. Lots more suggestions for the name of the show as well. Andy in Sandhurst says, always love your show and you're taking current affairs. Thank you, Andy. You should call your new show Cardi PM. A few people have made that suggestion, so that I quite like that one, actually. Maddie says the name of the new show should be Disagree Without Being Disagreeable, or something along those lines, says Maddie in Coventry. Great suggestion, maybe a little bit long though. Mark says after Lent you should call your show Cardi P and Diet Coke, like it. And Stephen Warwickshire says, how about House of Cardwell for the show? Very interesting from him too. We're going to talk about crime in this country. We're going to talk about shoplifting, forcing corner shops to raise the prices to pay for CCTV. And police chiefs pledging an era of openness, apparently. They're going to encourage police officers to talk to journalists. Well, will we get the full facts? That's a very big question, because there have been all sorts of issues, particularly in regard to the ethnicity of suspects, which I'm going to talk about with David Shipley in just a second. Stay with me here on Talk and get your views in as well. 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
I think we're all noticing the price of food, groceries, cost of living crisis is something that we're all living with, and we all notice when you go in and buy something you've bought previously and suddenly it's much more expensive. But part of that is shopkeepers increasing the average price by 11p per transaction to cover losses and security measures. This is corner shops being forced to impose this crime tax on every sale to combat the shoplifting epidemic. Shopkeepers spent a record £313 million to keep their stock secure and their staff safe in the past year. That's up from £265 million in 2024. We've all seen security tagging, we've seen protective screens, facial recognition cameras, AI store monitoring. I haven't seen that, I must say, but there's an awful lot. Small shops use and have the price of shoplifting on small shops is £7,137 on average in the last year. I mean, that's basically the price of a part-time member of staff on a Saturday or Sunday or whatever. I mean, this is crazy. Let's speak to David Shipley. He's an investigative journalist. David, really, really good to talk to you. I know we'll talk more in a second about police chiefs and their era of openness, but let's talk about shoplifting first. This is awful. It's inevitable, though, when you're dealing with tight margins and when you're dealing with a small shop.
I think it is, but also shoplifting has increased hugely over the last decade. You know, we're often have this debate about whether crime is up or down, but shoplifting certainly has gone up a lot. And what that huge increase doesn't capture is all this sort of response we get to it. You know, the weird cages round products, the extra cost of doing business, the extra price and things. And this is often where we miss the harm of crime. You know, you see it as well in the lack of, a lot of drivers driving around uninsured, for example, driving up everyone's insurance premiums. And one of the big issues with the government's new sentencing policies is that essentially, if you're a shoplifter, you won't be going to jail unless you go and steal something incredibly expensive and the magistrate's really having a bad day. So functionally, a lot of these crimes are consequence-free. You know, people get some probation, they breach the probation, go and steal some more stuff, and it just continues.
Well, one of the lads in the office actually was saying that he was in Marks and Spencer, was it, when he was, and someone was shoplifting. He reported it to a security guard. The security guard said, "Why didn't you stop them?" There's so many security guards that are clearly there as a deterrent, but also when they get involved or don't get involved, they're often told don't get involved because of the many problems that there are. Someone could pull a knife on you or attack you in some way, and of course that shouldn't be what it's like for any member of staff, least of all someone working on a cash register.
Well, we've all seen these videos, I'm sure, if we haven't seen it in person, of security guards standing there while shoplifting goes on, and I've heard them called urban scarecrows, which I think is quite an apt description sometimes.
Yeah.
I suspect a lot of the reason these security guards are there is simply because the shops have to have them for insurance purposes. I don't think in most cases they're not actually doing anything to prevent theft. In some places they are. So in Reading, I know they've actually, local businesses have clubbed together to fund actual security staff who will pursue shoplifters and recover goods and then hand the shoplifters over to the police. But that shows you how badly our policing is going when retailers have to fund their own security to prevent shoplifting.
Yeah, the figures that I quoted earlier on were compiled for the annual crime survey of the Association of Convenience Stores, which represents more than 50,000 corner shops across Britain. They're not only facing a record number of thefts, but competition from criminals as well. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about this, David. Selling illicit products, including tobacco, vapes and counterfeit food to their customers. We know certainly that there are many foodstuffs that steak, for example, is generally now tagged in different places, and even my local Sainsbury's actually just recently they've put up these huge perspex screens around where you pay for the food. I wonder, in your estimation and in your journalism, how much the cash registers that you can the self-checkouts, how much of that is part of it, where people just look as if they're doing it but just kind of walk away. I wonder whether that's a big part of it too, because we have fewer people in stores now, don't we?
I'm sure that is part of it. I suspect that would generally be opportunistic theft and not necessarily for sort of commercial purposes. The thing about shoplifting, sometimes people say, one of the things that is stolen most is baby formula, so that must be, for people just desperate to feed their babies, mothers. But actually, most of this stuff is stolen in bulk to be sold.
Yeah, and also baby formula can be used in drugs, can't it?
And yes,
to bulk up drugs. Yeah, precisely.
So the things that are stolen are often stolen by either organised gangs or sort of addicts who are looking to fund an addiction, and they are then selling those products in order to run their business or to fund the addiction. And that's a huge problem. I mean, I think we sort of think of shoplifting as a low value, low grade crime, but actually, no one likes to see their corner shop, their local shop being robbed, particularly when nothing seems to happen to the perpetrators. And especially when it means the whole shopping experience is made worse because of all these security measures, and it means us paying more for things. It's one of those crimes where actually the police need to do better and need to be actively going after shoplifters, and actually we need magistrates to be handing out proper sentences.
Let's talk a little bit about the police and how they communicate with us. This isn't, I don't want to be too indulgent. You're an investigative journalist, I'm a journalist. I don't want to be too self-indulgent about this, but I think our viewers and listeners really care about this stuff, because when there was the horrendous scenes in Liverpool where a man apparently drove a car into a crowd, that was just after Liverpool were celebrating their Premier League victory, we were told immediately that the suspect was a 50-something white British man. That was the main detail that came out. There was a smaller, but obviously very significant but similar event where a car was driven by someone into pedestrians in Leicester, which happened a few days later. And I was on air when it happened. We contacted the police in Leicester and said, what is the ethnicity of the suspect? What are all the details you can tell us? And they refused, after repeated requests, to give the ethnicity of the suspect. Now we're in a different era, actually, where police chiefs have announced a commitment, they say, to a new era of openness with the public about their investigations. A groundbreaking charter, they're calling it. Officers of all ranks will be actively encouraged to speak to journalists, providing more information about major investigations. The Policing and Media Charter is being described as the biggest reset in the relationship between policing and the media in decades. What do you make of this, David?
I mean, I think it sounds promising, doesn't it? And I think it's very important. We had the case, as you mentioned, but also, of course, there was Axel Rudy Cabana and Southport, where it took days for the truth to come out about, who he was, who had been arrested. And I think the huge problem is actually in that gulf, rumours can spread and it can get very, very, very fraught. But also, we are dealing with a crime wave being committed by particular migrant groups, especially Afghans at the moment. And I think we just need the state to start being honest about this stuff. And I think what is promising in this is they're saying, they're going to have a bias towards telling us what's going on. Part of the problem is that they are going to talk about nationality and ethnicity, but they're not going to talk about migration status of course. And actually, I think that's a really big one at the moment. What our migration policy should be is a matter of constant discussion. A big part of that is the relative criminality of different migrant groups. I think people rightly want to know, is the asylum seeker hotel down the road a big source of shoplifting? Yes. Or is it not? There's a real public interest in this stuff being shared. And I think it should be getting disclosed to the press and to the public in almost every case. And it's a very, very good reason not to share it.
David, really interesting to talk to you. David Shipley, their investigative journalist, thank you. Stephen Parkinson, who's the Director of Public Prosecutions, says this charter is another important step in strengthening how prosecutors work with policing and the media to build better understanding and confidence of the criminal justice system. The chairwoman of the Crime Reporters Association, who's also the Daily Mail's crime and security editor, Rebecca Camber, she instigated the reforms. She says the charter has the potential to fundamentally transform the relationship between the police and the media, which remains essential to public confidence and policing legitimacy in the UK. 2 years ago, the Crime Reporters Association made a series of recommendations kick-starting a vital conversation between policing and the media about rebuilding trust. Together, we have produced a groundbreaking charter which I hope will make a real difference to journalists, police and press officers anywhere. It'll be really interesting to see what the results of that are, especially with ongoing investigations where so many times we're told, and I've been told numerous times as a journalist, there's so little, we can't say it, we can't give you this information, it could prejudice an investigation, when half the time, most of the time actually, I would argue that that's just not the case at all. Lots to discuss on all of that. What do you think? 0344 499 1000. Betty says there was a large chap in Tesco last night, walks in, makes 2 huge coffees, standing there in front of all for several minutes in front of the security and staff, and then just walked out with the 2 coffees and a cauliflower. Not even sure he paid for his diesel. And the guy behind the counter, which is glass, added in a few months ago, who I know said, I don't even notice anymore. So Betty talked to that guy and said, I don't even notice anymore. Jules in Bristol says, I agree with Anne in Somerset, diet drinks are not good for you, don't go back to it. Another suggestion for a name, Cardwellian Times. There we are, says Jules in Bristol. Connect to Cardwell, says MG in Staffordshire. Evening tea with Cardi P, says JPH, which is apparently a reference to Bridgerton. I'm afraid I've never seen it, but thank you nonetheless for that. Whatever your thoughts, do keep them coming in. 0344 499 1000. I imagine that you will have some thoughts on warmer beer. Serve warmer beer to save on bills. Andy Lennox is a pub owner and he joins us next. I'd love to hear your views on all of this. 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
Conflict breaks out anywhere in the world, it has consequences here at home. Talk War is your definitive national security briefing. From the conflict in Ukraine to the tensions in Gaza and the latest escalation with Iran, this is where you'll find comprehensive comment and expert analysis with multiple updates throughout the day. The Talk War podcast from Talk, available on the Talk app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Now then, Ed Miliband, who is the Energy and Net Zero Secretary, has been talking about warm beer. He's saying serve warmer beer to save on bills. He's launched an energy advice tool for hospitality businesses aimed at helping them cut costs. And we know that hospitality has been through the mill over the last 5 years and longer, actually, when you put together all the costs that they've had, people leaving during COVID lockdowns for other countries, of course, the minimum wage going up on a number of occasions. We've also had things like the national insurance rises have all been there. Price of food has gone up as well. Many problems for the hospitality sector and pubs in particular. But now Ed Miliband has said that pubs should serve warmer beer, turn off ovens to save money on their energy bills. He's launched an advice tool aimed at hospitality businesses, which he hopes will ease the burden of rising costs in the struggling sector, and encourages them to reduce unnecessary electricity use by turning off bottle fridges overnight and to monitor hotspots such as extraction systems, ovens and lamps. Don't make me tell my joke about extractor fans again. Let's speak to a publican now, Andy Lennox, who's a pub owner. Andy, you're very welcome to the programme. Will this work? Will this help you save on your bills?
You know, it would help us save on our bills if we weren't already doing that. But ultimately, the actual suggestions in this is just frankly idiotic. You know, it actually costs more energy to turn a bottle fridge off and then turn it back on.
Brilliant.
We're pretty good at what we do, and we've been through the mill, as you were saying earlier. And you know, ultimately, I'm frankly just absolutely fed up with the amount of politicians who think that they can tell us what we or how we should be operating. We've told them what we need. We need a VAT cut in line with Europe. Nothing else is going to cut it. And Ed Miliband, frankly, should just shut up.
So actually turning off a bottle fridge and turning it back on again uses more energy than even switching it off overnight?
Yeah, because ultimately you've got to basically bring it back up to refrigeration standards. So
yes,
and this is the stupid things. I mean, we use kinetic magnets on our gas pipes to save on gas. We've been through this. We did this pre-COVID. This is just ridiculous, stupidity from ministers who don't frankly have a clue. They won't listen. They refuse to listen. We keep on sitting there and saying, look, if you want to help this industry, we know exactly how you can help this industry. Put a VAT cut in line with Europe, like every other European nation has done, and leave us alone, and we'll get on and drive the economy forward, and we'll be the engine room for the economy. It's just this with Ed Miliband and this energy saving tool alongside this new £2,000 grant that's come out from the work and pensions. It's just idiotic.
I mean, I'm laughing, Andy, and I shouldn't be, but it is as you say, it is farcical. It is absurd that. You know what you're doing here. You've been really clear about what you need and what you want. So much of what successive governments, I'm not just blaming Labour, Conservatives as well, have done over the past, particularly, I mean, I'm not an expert, but 5 or 6 years, certainly from many people I've heard in your position, who own pubs or landlords or people who are industry experts, Nighttime Industries Association and so on. You've been really, really hammered. It's been one thing after another. I have a lovely local boozer where I am. I do the pub quiz there. I'm not a drinker, but I'm very happy to go in and get a drink or a soft drink or some really good food. They're a really good local pub. They do a great quiz. The people there remember you. They say hello. They're nice people. And I am really worried. Every time I walk past, I look in and I see, are there people there? Are they using it? And we have, 8 pubs a week close in the UK?
Yeah, eight hospitality businesses close every day. It's not every week; it's every day.
It's every day. Okay.
And that's across the 7 pubs, 8 hospitality businesses, and
yes.
Ultimately it is becoming an epidemic. And the problem that we have at the moment is that the ministers won't listen. They think they keep on coming up with these things like energy, saving tools, and nobody is saying that a pub that doesn't run well should be saved. That's not. There are lots of pubs that go bust because they're not very good.
Well, there can't be too many. There can't be too many pubs out there that aren't running, maybe not well, but certainly efficiently when it comes to things like energy. There can't be too many pubs where there's a load of waste that are still surviving in this economy.
Yeah, and put it this way, if they aren't doing that, they won't be here very long. And there's a fundamental problem with the energy piece. We've all been signed into relatively high contracts. Some of us have been able to get out of them and be moved back into to normal standard rates. But you've got energy companies now who are enforcing on 7-day bills. I mean, we're talking, with debt collectors on a bill that was generated 7 days previously. Yeah. The energy sector is going absolutely mental, and so for the pure audacity, actually, quite frankly, for a minister to come out and say, you know what, guys, turn your fridges off, or do these things, it's just pure farcical. We're the 3rd biggest employer in the country. We generate 66 billion in taxation for UK PLC. We're a big deal. And when people people need to start to realise that actually, we're the engine room of the economy. Mm-hmm. And quite frankly, with the advent of AI, we're going to be one of the biggest employers in the country.
Yeah.
So we need to start really listening to our industry leaders, who have been banging the door for a very long time. We need a VAT cut in line with Europe, like the rest of Europe, who've had, even Ireland now is 9%. We're 20%.
Can I ask you? Can I ask you just about whether people do like warmer beer? Because we've had quite a debate and quite a lot of people coming on the programme, sending in their messages and letting us know their thoughts about beer. And there seems to be a bit of a generational shift perhaps in this.
Yeah, it depends on what you like.
Yeah,
Depends on what you like.
One of our correspondents there, one of our texters, regular texter, Mary in County Down, said she was a barmaid, and there were lots of people who liked a sort of room temperature Guinness in the Royal British Legion where she worked.
Well, I mean, a room temperature Guinness, I'm not entirely sure about that. But I mean, a room temperature ale, if an ale was served properly, it shouldn't be cold, freezing cold. A lager should be cold. But again, it's like, we know what we're doing. We're not stupid. This industry is not this big because we're full of idiots. And to be treated as such, it's just really quite farcical. And what we've said, we need a VAT cut in line with Europe. Nothing else.
Yeah,
nothing else.
That's what you want.
And everything else needs to be laid by needs to be just forgotten about. We don't want to talk about rates. We don't want to talk about next. I don't want to talk about energy. I don't want to talk about, whether I'm getting a grant for £2,000 when I'm already had my NICS bill go up by 7. I want to talk about a VAT cut in line with Europe, and that is the campaign that's coming down the line, whether they like it or not. But quite frankly, serving a warm beer is, a warm beer or an ale potentially, is but that would be warm anyway. But a lager, no, never.
Yeah, okay.
And it's just stupid. It's just utterly stupid.
Andy, thanks for your thoughts. Andy Lennox there, who is the owner of a pub. Thanks to the texter who says they don't want us to have pubs because then we talk to one another. Time for a quick call from Tony in Doncaster. Tony, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Well, talking about stupid, I came home from work today, like a lot of people, disillusioned with the economy, with fuel prices and, one thing or another anyway. I think what finally finished for me today, it was like a black comedy sketch, was this. We had the war for 3 years, and what anybody's opinion about the Ukraine war is, everybody can agree that it's cost us as ratepayers money to put in, like the rest of the European Union and America, towards Ukraine. Mm-hmm. We've then got a second conflict, whether we want to be in it or not, that's now indirectly affecting us financially, with fuel prices going up, which will then in turn put food up over the next few weeks. So again, a second conflict that's costing us money. And because the country now is broke, we've got Mr. Zelensky's come back today into Parliament saying, well, forget about this war, remember us, because we want more of your money. So we've got a situation where we've got one warship that barely works, 2 aircraft carriers, but Israel and Iran want us to go in one war, Ukraine wants us to go into another war, and everybody's wanting us money. And we've got Mr. Miliband, who we've got about warm beer, was sat there today at the front desk, if I think I'm correct, in Parliament, and he's clapping away at the Ukraine leader. Now, this is the guy that's saying we can't do this and we can't do this and we have to have solar power, but he's quite happy to sanction off missiles and bombs that destroy the environment and animals and everything else, and the hypocrisy of it all. It's like an Ealing comedy.
Well, listen, thanks, Tony. Although the good thing with Ealing comedies is that they have wit and panache and a plot as well. You kind of generally know that there will be some sort of outcome with Ealing comedies as well. But Tony and Doncaster, thank you so much for your thoughts on all of that. Keep them coming in, 0344 499 1000. In just a second, we're going to talk about the relationship with America as well. We'll talk about anti-Semitism too. Loads to discuss, including how warm you want your beer. 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It's just gone 9 o'clock. This is Talk. Thank you so much for your company. I'm Peter Cardwell, here until 10 o'clock. I'm actually not going to be here tomorrow night. I'm going to be covering for Ian Collins. I'll be here between 1 and 4 tomorrow afternoon. So quick turnaround for me. Tomorrow night's host is to be announced, but I'll be back on Thursday, certainly in this slot. So much to discuss tonight, though, including the US-UK relationship, what the Foreign Secretary has said, but more interestingly, what the President has said about our Prime Minister, Keir Starmer. Donald Trump has been excoriating in his criticism. Also, lots to talk about in regard to the anti-Semitism that is destroying this country. The boss of Gale's Bakery saying he won't accept intimidation after the ludicrous, offensive, dreadful Guardian opinion piece. We'll talk about the Green Party. They're going to vote on challenging the NHS on an anti-Semitism crackdown. Yes, really. Anti-Jewish hate crimes are half as likely to be prosecuted as those against Muslims. We're also talking about how warm you like your beer. Ed Miliband says switch off those fridges, publicans. We've just had a publican who has come on to say that's nonsense. Actually switching off the beer fridge and switching it on again uses more energy than just keeping it on all night. So Ed Miliband making a ludicrous remark not based on facts yet again. So much to discuss between now and 10. I want to discuss it with you. Plenty of time for calls too. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. Send me a voice note 0344 499 1000. We'll play those out before the end of the programme. You can also send me a WhatsApp text message, or you can give me a ring on that main number too, 0344 499 1000. Let's get going here on Talk. Thank you to Rob in London for sending me a WhatsApp saying, "Evening, Peter. Nigel Farage will certainly support and save our pubs if he becomes Prime Minister. He loves his pubs, as we know," says Rob in London. Certainly, if there's one thing we know that Nigel Farage likes, it is a pint in a pub, certainly. Lots to discuss on what is happening across the Atlantic. We'll hear what Donald Trump has to say in just a second. But Yvette Cooper, the Foreign Secretary here in the UK, had an update for British nationals in the Middle East in the House of Commons earlier today. Let's hear that.
Let me update the House on support for British nationals in the region. On the outset of this crisis, more than 300,000 British citizens were in the region. And when the airstrikes started and airspace closed, many were stuck. And we've been working relentlessly since then to help them get home. This has been a complex task. Our 24/7 Crisis Response Centre, working with our embassies, partner governments and the rapid deployment teams we sent to operate on the ground. And we've worked closely with airlines. We've laid on additional government charter flights from Muscat and from Dubai. And we estimate now that the number of British nationals who will have flown back from the region since the start of the war will today reach 100,000.
Yvette Cooper in the House of Commons earlier today. She also talked about what she thought Iran was trying to do in regard to the global economy. Let's hear more from the Foreign Secretary.
In the last 7 days, we've seen Iran particularly focus their strikes on economic infrastructure in the Gulf. Oil fields in Saudi, ports in Oman, strikes against commercial ships from Thailand and Malta, threatened mines in the Strait of Hormuz. Iran is seeking to hijack the global economy, holding hostage supplies of oil, gas and fertiliser, affecting prices and supply chains across the globe and threatening the cost of living here at home, causing real worry for our constituents across the country.
The Foreign Secretary giving some very interesting updates to the House of Commons, important too, but much more important was what the President of the United States said today, St Patrick's Day. He was sitting beside the Taoiseach, the Prime Minister of Ireland, Micheál Martin, in the Oval Office and started giving his views on Keir Starmer. Really, really interesting clip you're about to hear. We'll get some reaction in just a second to that from the spokesman for Republicans overseas, Errol Murkoch. But let's hear what the President said first.
We have a tremendous long-term relationship with the UK. I mean, people would say it's the best. I don't want to get into that, but we've had, it was the longest, the oldest, should be the best. Always was the best until Keir came along, and now, and I like him. He's a nice man. He says everything beautiful. He's a very nice man with a beautiful family. Everything's perfect, but he doesn't produce. And I think it's very inexpensive. I just said, you don't have to send me aircraft carriers. Send me a couple of minesweepers. We don't need your aircraft carriers. But even the aircraft carriers, he would only send them after we essentially won. I mean, he's sending them when there are no planes left, when the missiles are down to 8%.
Well, lots to chew over in all of that. Let's speak to Errol Moorcoach now. He's a spokesman for Republicans overseas. Errol, great to talk to you. We've spoken to people both here in the UK and indeed across the pond on this. And clearly, Donald Trump really unhappy with Keir Starmer. The backdrop of this war has meant, in his view, clearly the special relationship is not what it was. What's your take on this?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway is that he's able to separate the relationship from Keir Starmer. He seems to be extraordinarily disappointed in Keir himself. I think he's able to also indicate to the rest of the British voting populace that he would be willing to work much more friendly with somebody else should they choose to. But also he does have a bone to pick, because he really did talk up that special relationship. He wanted to have maybe a extraordinary type of rollback in the clock, sort of how the US and the UK used to operate. And when he didn't get that let's say that same warm feeling, and then other certain behaviors such as the Chagos Islands, the kind of behaviors that didn't correlate with how he saw an ally to behave, I think it's caused him to lose all faith in Keir Starmer and therefore kind of start poking at this special relationship. But at its core, he's separated the two, and I think that's important to take away.
I just want to talk to you as well about what Emily Thornberry has said. Let's hear this clip of the chairwoman of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee. She is the Labour MP, Dame Emily Thornberry. She spoke to BBC Radio 4 this morning about the visit of Charles and Camilla, the King and Queen. This is what she said.
The King's state visit to the US, which is supposed to be happening next month. Is it appropriate, do you think, for that to still go ahead, with relations being what they are and the situation being what it is?
I think the most important thing is that it will be going, if it was to go ahead next month, and I don't know, the dates haven't been confirmed, but if it was to go, everybody seems to think it's going to be next month, it would go ahead against a backdrop of a war, and that, I think, is quite difficult. And the last thing that we want to do is to have His Majesty's, their Majesties embarrassed.
Emily Thornberry there, the chairwoman of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee. What do you make of that, Errol?
Yeah, that's a bizarre statement to me, and probably any American who would hear that. Probably the only good thing the UK has going for it diplomatically with the United States does seem to be the royal family. And Donald Trump does have a long-term respect for that. And my gosh, why not use some of the soft power in the British arsenal to influence decisions where Keir Starmer might run into a roadblock because he's run out of rope with Donald Trump? The king certainly has more leeway. So, closing your own doors and battening up their own hatchets as you sink your own ship is not exactly the wisest choice. I guess perhaps the concept of there being a backdrop of a war involving the meeting of a European monarch with a foreign president isn't also exactly something, we've got to avoid that. My goodness, if that ever happened in history, that would really tarnish the image of the monarchy. So it sounds like, again, a government that it's impossible for us to work with under the current circumstances. Again, outside of course, the Five Eyes and the back end, probably still corroborating on all important things. On the front end, diplomatically, to try to fumble the only advantage you have, which is the monarchy that Trump has affiliation for, I think is a poor choice.
Do you worry that President Trump may embarrass the King and Queen? I mean, he's got through a number of these two state visits previously, many meetings with various members of the royal family, and all seems to have gone reasonably well.
Yeah, I think it's gone reasonably well, and all of the faux pas have been procedural, of course, and something that, maybe he's took the wrong step to the left or should have been
walking in front of the Queen, for example.
Yes, and all in all, with all pardons aside, I think he's also dealt with other royalty in other countries, in the Middle East especially. So he goes out of his way to be conciliatory and respectful, and he certainly would do his best as a host. I can't pretend that he's not going to make some faux pas. I guess, the advantage will be that it'll be on American soil, so he won't be offending certain customs there. But I think he'll be a magnificent host, somebody who represents who America is in our 250th year. We originated out of the UK. We are the former colonies of His Majesty the King, and therefore I see no reason why it would be anything but an honor for the U.S. president to welcome back the former ruler of these lands.
It's interesting that President Trump has had a number of blows to his authority, some would argue. Certainly his counterterrorism chief, his top counterterrorism aide, Joe Kent, the director of the National Counterterrorism Centre, has resigned over the war in Iran today. We know that there are others within the administration very unhappy about this. Tell me your thoughts.
So I've had drinks with Joe Kent once. He was a very principled person. It doesn't surprise me that he would stick to his principles and resign based on his sort of libertarian, isolationist beliefs. He's always kept that on the forefront. So, I respect the fact that we have a big tent, and some people feel that this is a betrayal, and in some respects, I understand how they can feel that way, but they also have to understand that Donald Trump is the American president. He's not the MAGA president. He's not the libertarian president. He's not the neocon president. He's not the progressive. I mean, he has to wear many hats when he has to deal with with a lot of political ideologies. And while some people do feel that this war has abrogated his promises, he also promised during the campaign that he would bomb the heck out of Iran should they cross a certain line. And so, we have to balance all of that. But that doesn't mean that we should I wouldn't want to come out and castigate or put down people who've resigned on principle. I can respect that the principles no longer align with the president, but they have been good people beforehand, and those principles don't work doesn't mean that America doesn't go forward without them.
Yeah, speaking of America going forward, Iranian state media has confirmed that the security chief Ali Laranjani has been killed, an evil, horrible man who's part of the regime who has been incorrectly called a moderate by some journalists. Absolutely outrageous that they should do so as a tool of that dreadful regime. That will be a boost, certainly, to Donald Trump as this war is now in its third week. But how much American public patience do you think there is for this war, especially for a president who said that he wasn't going to be a war one?
The patience is entirely tied to the gas prices and the time of engagement. So there is leeway to some degree. People do understand, especially older generations who were there for the last 50 years. Younger people, it doesn't really resonate. The embassy invasion in '79, all of that doesn't translate. But I think the prices at the pump is starting to creep up, and certainly that's where Donald Trump is going to run into the midterms having an issue. So there is a stomach for it, but he needs to frame things a little bit better. And knocking out these commanders and this and that, it sounds good, but eventually we run out with the names start to just trickle into a blended smorgasbord of terrorists that we've killed. So either we need to kind of pull up and declare victory. In any other time in history, if you went somewhere, destroyed their entire Navy, Air Force, killed their commander, killed their kings, killed their generals, wiped out all of their artillery and cavalry and left, you could call it a win. In modern days, the School of Foreign Service says you need to do a regime change and everything. Trump maybe won't have the success there, but that doesn't mean this can't be a military victory if we spin it correctly and also listen to the American people who are going to have a voice in the midterms.
Thank you, Errol Murkoch there. He's a spokesman for Republicans overseas. Appreciate you joining us this evening. What do you think of what he said? 0344 499 1000. In a minute, we're going to speak to Gary Mond about so many issues that are affecting not just the Jewish community, but many others as well. The Gales controversy continues with the horrendous, awful, unspeakable Guardian article. Apparently quite a number of Guardian journalists not happy with it either. The Green Party up to their old tricks, thinking about voting to challenge the NHS on its anti-Semitism crackdown. They're saying, they're thinking, certainly some members of the Green Party, maybe you shouldn't crack down on anti-Semitism. Hello? Where have you been for the last 2.5 years? And also this really shocking statistics about anti-Jewish hate crimes that are half as likely to be prosecuted as those against Muslims. We'll get your views too on all of this. Text me 87222, send me a voice note or give me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
conflict breaks out anywhere in the world, it has consequences here at home. Talk War is your definitive national security briefing. From the conflict in Ukraine to the tensions in Gaza and the latest escalation with Iran, this is where you'll find comprehensive comment and expert analysis with multiple updates throughout the day. The Talk War podcast from Talk, available on the Talk app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you to everybody who's been in touch, including Jen in Wolves, who says Andy Lennox is bang on correct. People do not realise the passion and dedication that it takes to run a pub. Also, you have to be highly trained in all aspects. It's not like these in EastEnders, one of the cretins off the square stroll into the Queen Vic and announce they're buying it. Millipede has no clue. To be fair, he can't even eat a bacon sandwich, but I'm pretty sure he wouldn't like it if his champagne was lukewarm, says Jen. Dean says warm lager is just a pint of froth. Pete. Lots of different ideas for the name of the show as well. Because I'm going to be on between 1 and 4 tomorrow. The meeting was meant to be at 1 o'clock with the creative people, so that'll be changed now. But I am here between 1 and 4 tomorrow, sitting in for Ian Collins, who's sitting in for Jeremy Kyle on breakfast. Thank you to this person who says that his previous cat of the week, Vienna, is 19 today. Vienna was sick last week and I didn't think she was going to make it to her 19th birthday. A birthday wish from her favourite talk presenter would make her day. Well, happy birthday, Vienna the cat. And you are absolutely beautiful. I see this photograph from the screen in front of me here. Fitzy says, call the show Extractor fan. That is after my appalling joke earlier when I said I could do an impression of an Extractor fan by saying I used to like tractors. Paul says, idea for the name of your show, Speak Free with Cardi P. Deborah says, we can drill in the North Sea for gas instead of paying the price to the Norwegians. Norway is a rich country and will set up over 200 drilling stations in the future. Sebastian Salek, who was on the show earlier today, is another Mad Ed Miliband. Nicholas says Sebastian needs to realise that if Iran gets a nuke, we will all be dead, and even in a body bag because they're made from hydrocarbons, which he wants to abolish, okay? Sharon says, hi Peter, I'm really enjoying your new show. How about Peter's evening update, says Sharon. Mike says the show should be called You, Me and Cardi P. Another person says, what a great guest Edmund Fitton Brown was. Please have him on again. He's superb. He is one of my favourite commentators on the Middle East and certainly all those issues. And another one of my favourite commentators specifically, not just in the Middle East, in which he takes a very keen interest, but on anti-Semitism here in the UK, is Gary Maughan, who's the chairman of the Reform Jewish Alliance. Gary, you're very welcome to the programme. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine, thank you, Peter, and I hope you are too.
Thank you very much indeed. I just want to ask you about some of these stories that are around today. We covered last night, you may have seen the programme, about Gales, about the bakery, and now the boss himself says he won't accept intimidation after this Guardian opinion piece. Horrendous attacks on that business. What do you make of this, Gary?
This is just yet another aspect of the anti-Semitism that is infecting our country over the last 2.5 years since the 7th of October 2023. We're seeing it in so many areas of our lives, in schools, in hospitals, universities, the corporate workplace, and now we're actually seeing businesses being targeted in this way by people who are quite frankly Jew haters. They like to use Gaza and Palestine as an excuse for the disgraceful behaviour. Unfortunately, the government needs to get a grip, and there is no other solution other than changes that are to be made by the government to deal with the anti-Semitism that we're facing.
It is astonishing. It's worth repeating what Jonathan Liew, the Guardian writer, wrote. He said the cafe's very presence was symbolic of Israeli repression. He wrote, even though Gales describes itself as a British business with no specific connections to any country or government outside the UK, its very presence 20 metres away from a small independent Palestinian cafe feels quietly symbolic, an act of heavy-handed high street aggression. I mean, that is just really straightforward in what he is saying. It's so clear what his views are. The chief executive of the bakery says, we live in a democracy that welcomes different opinions, but we will not accept hate and intimidation in our bakeries. We're a neighbourhood bakery that is on a mission to feed more people better. We are firm believers that a healthy high street is a diverse one made up of many different businesses from many different backgrounds, each playing their part. We want to serve the best possible food to our communities, and the vandalism we experienced in Archway serves as a distraction from doing that Archway in London there. Another Guardian reporter apparently telling Jewish News, the Jewish newspaper, they were extremely uncomfortable about the decision to publish the piece. The reporter said, this column is encouraging violence and hatred. I cannot understand why it's allowed to be staying online. I feel absolutely sickened.
Yes, I actually was about to say, this is a rather sick way of thinking on the part of The Guardian, that to actually say that a business that just happens to be Jewish owned, doesn't matter whether it's Jewish owned or not, but any business could actually be seen to be intimidating another business 20 metres away just because it's from another country is absolutely ludicrous. And they're not from another country. It's a Jewish owned business. And just because the other business happens to be Arab owned is totally irrelevant.
Yes, you're absolutely right. The British Board of Deputies of British Jews says it's not acceptable to relate the opening of a bakery as an act of aggression. Most people will find this article steeped in tropes and innuendos as deeply insidious and will want to know why The Guardian thinks an op-ed seemingly justifying tensions between communities has a place on its pages. I do wonder, as others do, why on earth The Guardian still has it on its website. Let's talk about the Green Party now, which another institution that has many anti-Semites in it. More than 200,000 members are going to vote now on whether the Green Party should challenge an ongoing review of anti-Semitism in the NHS and oppose restrictions on free speech in the workplace. In the first 18 months after the Hamas terrorist attacks on the October the 7th, the General Medical Council received almost 500 complaints of anti-Semitism relating to 123 doctors, including, we're very familiar with Dr. Rami Aladwan, a trainee trauma and orthopaedic surgeon who initially escaped suspension despite making slit-your-throat gestures to Jewish protesters and describing a North London hospital as a Jewish supremacy cesspit.
It's absolutely disgraceful. You see, I'm all in favour of free speech, but that's free speech outside the workplace. When you're at work and you're being paid to do a job, you don't indulge in politics. And what we've seen, particularly with nurses and doctors wearing Free Palestine badges and also making some of these comments, is outrageous, it's anti-Semitic, and it must not be allowed. And the fact that the Green Party is going down the route of essentially promoting anti-Semitism, because that's what it's actually doing, is absolutely out of the question and should be stopped at law.
It's interesting as well with the NHS aspect because the motion for the Green Party is titled "There's a Crisis in Healthcare." Activists have called for the Greens to address oppression abroad and repression at home, adding NHS staff cannot speak up against genocide. Well, they often do, even though the genocide is factually not correct and so factually something that hasn't happened. If passed, the motion calls for members of Parliament to oppose the government's plan to tackle anti-Semitism and other racism. I mean, who is actually going to say, yeah, do you know what, I'm going to put up my hand here and I'm going to say I want to oppose the government's plan to tackle anti-Semitism and other racism? I mean, it's so naked, it's so straightforward.
It beggars belief. It's beggars belief. And what is also interesting is they say nothing at all about 30 to 40,000 people being murdered on the streets of Iran a couple of months ago. That, of course, they're quiet about. Why are they quiet about it? Because Jews are not involved.
Yeah, no Jews, no news. Speaking of Jewish people being involved, anti-Jewish hate crimes are now half as likely to be prosecuted as those against Muslims. What do you make of these statistics, Gary?
Well, the first thing I would say is that I'm as opposed to anti-Muslim hatred as I am to anti-Semitism. Hating people simply because of who they are or what they are is unacceptable. That differentiates between hating a religion or hating a creed where you might have profound disagreement with it. But those statistics, to answer a question directly, are worrying because we are actually seeing a two-tier system developing, and it's developed profoundly over the last 2 to 3 years, in our justice system and in so many areas of life, unfortunately. This is just yet one more example.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Gary. There is so much naked anti-Semitism. We need to strip it down. We need to make sure that we engage with all of it and call it out for what it is, and that's what you do. So Gary, thank you. Gary Mond there, chairman of the Reform Jewish Alliance. So appreciate that. Lots more to discuss in the next half an hour. I will say, actually, I've noticed a couple of little changes just when I've moved from weekends to the evenings. There don't seem to be just quite as many voice notes coming in. If you want to send a voice note in, I will play it out. If it says things that are legal for you to say and you have an opinion on, even if I disagree with you, I will play it out. So we had an awful lot of the weekend. I'm going to make sure, one thing that the production team and I are going to do is make sure on this show that if you send in a voice note, if we can play it, we will play it. And I want to play one now from Sarah on warm beer. This is what Sarah says.
What really boils my blood is these politicians tell us that we need to change the way that we live our lives to compensate for their incompetence and their mismanagement, their lack of investment, their lack of forward thinking. So rather than look at the issue and look at the solutions, they just say to us, no, you've got to have warm beer. It's like the water. Rather than investing in the infrastructure and stopping all the leaks, no, we've got a hosepipe ban. You see where this is going? We have to change our lives because of their incompetence, and it is so frustrating.
Sarah, that's a great voice note. Thank you. Very good example of a very good voice note. You keep them to less than a minute. You tell us what you think. You may not feel as if you want to give me a ring for a conversation, and that's okay. I love when people do, and we're going to take a load more calls between now and 10 o'clock. But if you want to send me a voice note, if you just have, a quick thought, put it on a voice note, send it through WhatsApp. Dead easy. You send it to 0344 499 1000. You save that in your phone. You send them through. Whatever you want to say in your voice note, if we can play it, we will. And I make that commitment to you right now. We're also going to take a lot more calls, texts, tweets, and hopefully voice notes between now and 10 o'clock. So give me a ring or send me a voice note on the main number, which is 0344 499 1000. Stay with us here on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you to everybody who's been in touch, including Ken in Manchester, who has some thoughts on Iran and the oil that we, of course, needs to come through the Straits of Hormuz, including for us. Ken's in Manchester and has some thoughts. 0344 499 1000 is the number he has called. Ken, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Well, we keep being told that 20% of the world's oil comes through the Straits of Hormuz. That means that 80% of it is coming from somewhere else. So the vast majority of oil is still coming through. So why is there all this panic about the price of fuel going to rocket?
Well, a fifth of the supply is quite a lot, isn't it? And especially when you have, America produces a lot of its own oil, a lot of South American countries too as well. China does too, but they still need extra, and we need it too. Because it affects, if you're going to have a fifth of the supply being in jeopardy, that's going to affect the price otherwise, isn't it, Ken?
Oh, yes, it's going to, I agree, it's going to affect the price. But there seems to be a real panic about this. It's going to really cripple us with the prices.
Well, if the price has gone up to a huge degree, and home heating oil, for example, has gone up 80% in a week. I mean, those are real things happening to real people in this country, Ken.
Oh yes, yeah. I don't know whether I've got a too simplistic view of this. It seems to me that there seems to be too much speculation on, a panic mode about, which we seem to get into very easily in this country.
I mean, I would panic if I had to, if this was September, right, and I had to keep my family warm over the winter, and I was told that the price of home heating oil is going to go up by 80% in a cost of living crisis. Like, we may be very far away from Iran, but all of us are feeling the effects of it, aren't we, Ken?
Oh yeah, I agree on that. Yeah.
I don't want people to panic. I don't want people to feel to feel horribly insecure about this. But prices will rise, and it will have a major effect on the economy, as Yvette Cooper says, Ken.
Oh, I think I agree. Prices are going to go up, but I still get the feeling that there's a lot of scaremongering going on at the moment out there. I agree that the heating oil has jumped enormously, but the price of fuel around where I am in Manchester, it's gone up a bit, but it's not gone up a great deal.
It'll be interesting to see what happens over the next few weeks and months, depending on how long this goes on. Ken, listen, thanks for your thoughts. I appreciate that. I want to go to Mark in Lincolnshire, who has some thoughts on what's going on with Jeffrey Epstein and the ongoing controversy there.
Hi there, Peter.
Hi, Mark.
Hi there. I've got to get on to something else in a second, matey.
Okay, go ahead.
I've just seen a tweet from Zia Youssef, and it's war. Anyway, the Epstein thing. I just thought it was really quite interesting. We saw Britain have put a thing out today. Basically, now as far as I'm aware, it's the only party offering this in this country. They've basically said that they will publish the unredacted files on all British politicians and business figures who visited Epstein Island. If you want transparency, vote for it.
How would they have the power to do that? That's for the American authorities to do, not for a British political party.
I'm imagining there's going to be files within Westminster as well, aren't there?
All right.
That have been sent over that have probably been, kept quiet. Like, how they released the stuff with Mandelson.
Yeah. No, I get that.
There's going to be lots of other stuff, isn't there? One presumes anyway, but that's all he's really saying at the end of the day. If there's any files there, they'll release them unredacted.
Okay.
Simple as.
What's the Youssef said that's upset you, Mark?
What's upset me? He's been making some speech at yet another one of these ridiculous bloody reform conferences, election tours, or whatever they're calling them.
It's not ridiculous to campaign. I mean, there is an election in less than 2 months in this country. You would expect a political party to campaign.
That nobody else is doing. Only Reform seem to want to do this every night for some weird reason.
Well, the reason is, Mark, that they want to get votes. They're at 25%. Mark, listen to me a second. The reason they're doing this is because they want to get votes. They're 25% in the polls, and they want to do very well at the local election. That's why they're holding campaign events.
Yeah, the only party that are doing this.
Well, other parties will be out there campaigning.
The regularity that they're doing it, shall we say.
What's wrong with it? What's wrong with that? They can do what they want.
There's nothing wrong with it. If they want to do the Pontins thing, they can go for it. I don't really care. What's annoyed me is he's basically put out a tweet that's essentially saying reform will ensure that justice is served for the victims of the rape gangs. Now, that's really wound me up, because not bloody once, has anybody at Reform, before Restore Britain, before Rupert Lowe changed that into a political party, not once has any one of them from Reform said anything about his inquiry. Bloody Farage, he offered an inquiry, and within about 2 weeks, he wormed out of doing one.
But there is an inquiry now. There is, but Mark, Rupert Lowe's doing his own inquiry, and that's fair enough. But there is a government inquiry. There is an inquiry into the rape gangs. That is happening.
Yeah, which hasn't really happened, has it?
No, it hasn't happened yet. No, certainly. But Reform UK want that to happen.
The thing is, Reform have said this. Farage came out with and said, well, it needs... The way he wormed out of it was, well, it needs statutory powers, really.
Mark,
that's a fair enough thing.
Okay, Mark, hold on.
Before you say anything, Mark, look, you've got me, I'm really wound up.
I can tell that, but I want to ask you a question. Mark, I want to ask you a question. Do you honestly not think that Reform UK politicians want to get justice for those victims?
Perhaps they do. I'm just really angry that the way they've gone about stuff, to be quite frank with you, that they couldn't for 1 second just, bury their, pride and all the rest of it and say something about Lowe's inquiry.
Okay.
That's all I'm saying. The statutory power thing, Peter, at the end of the day, whatever anybody thinks about that, as a direct result of Lowe's inquiry, there are now active cases with the police from people that have come forward as a direct result. Something that if they'd waited for the bloody government to do anything, they'd be waiting God knows how many years.
Okay. Mark, listen, thanks for your call there. That's Mark in Lincolnshire. I want to play a voice note now from Mick. This is on anti-Semitism.
Hi, Peter. The government are moving us into a pro-Islamic society. They seem to be doing everything they can to encourage the Islamic faith and diminish any rights that the Jewish people have. They are anti-Semitic, pro-Islamic, and this country is going to hell in a handcart.
Mick, thank you for your voice note. If more voice notes come in and you want to get them on the air and there are things that we can broadcast legally, well, we will do so. So thank you for that from Mick. Dean has messaged me with the numbers and I'm not entirely sure why he's done that. Dean, are you trying to do something else? Because sometimes you have very, very good points to make, but that is Dean, the texter, has just texted me the numbers 03444991000 and 87222. But there we are on WhatsApp. Not entirely sure why that has happened. We will take some more calls in just a minute, but I just want to take a quick one from another Dean in Sutton. On warm beer. Dean, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Well, all I want to say, Pete, as well as you know, you put a warm pint of lager on the beer and it's just a pint of froth. There's nothing else but a pint of froth.
Well, there's some people who like that, though. There's some people who like their beer a bit warm.
Well, unless they got wafers to make it look like an ice cream, you can't drink it because it's just froth.
So do you like an ice-cold beer then, Dean?
Oh, like an ice-cold one, yeah.
And what's your preference? What type do you like?
Sorry?
What type do you like?
Well, Stella or the Carlsberg Export, or if I'm going to be a girly, it's got to be a Carlsberg normal one.
Okay. Well,
all right.
Well, that's good. That's good stuff. Listen, thanks for your call, Dean. I really appreciate that. And you can certainly enjoy a tipple at the next thing I'm going to tell you about, because we're giving you the chance to win 2 hospitality tickets to the British Grand Prix on Sunday, the 5th of July. The full Racing Green trackside experience will await you if you win. This is the ultimate setup for race day. You'll get exclusive grandstand seats at the Loop and Village Corners, plus inner track access to watch the drivers arriving at the paddock, and access to the hospitality shuttle bus for easy on-site transport, racing simulators and live music between sessions, and all-day street food and an open bar. Listen up to find out how you could be in with a chance to win.
For your chance to win, text TALK to 83338. Text costs £2.50 plus your standard network rate. Or call 0343 418 7260. Lines close 20th of March 2026 at 4 p.m. That's when you need to answer your phone if it rings. 18 plus UK residents only. This is a network promotion. Full T's and C's at talk.tv/win. So for your chance to win, text TALK to 83338 now.
conflict breaks out anywhere in the world, it has consequences here at home. Talk War is your definitive national security briefing. From the conflict in Ukraine to the tensions in Gaza and the latest escalation with Iran, this is where you'll find comprehensive comment and expert analysis with multiple updates throughout the day. The Talk War podcast from Talk, available on the Talk app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thanks for all your WhatsApps and messages. Elisa says the hate crimes against Jews, there's something seriously dodgy going on with the Crown Prosecution Service. They simply cannot be trusted to take Jew hate seriously. Well, I know there's some lawyers in the Crown Prosecution Service who do an absolutely brilliant job bringing people to justice, but I think as an institution there are many questions we should ask of it, certainly. Angela says, I'm so fed up with Mark from Lincolnshire. If he doesn't care why the hate for Reform UK, as for his comments tonight, honestly, I just think he and people like him will split the right vote and let in the far left, says Angela. Lindy says, why can't we have energy security with our natural national resources? Use those dividends to fund expanding renewable energy and research and development into future opportunities. Why are we spending billions on buying from others, funding their industries? And a few more suggestions for what to call the show. Your evening with Cardi P, says one person, or does that sound like a date night? That's Debbie who says that. And PCQs, which is an interesting one, maybe a little bit too research perhaps, but that is from Nat, who has some ideas on that. She's also said digestible politics with Cardi P, good night politics with Peter Cardwell, and she says that she doesn't like Cardi PM. I do quite like Cardi PM, I must say, because it reminds her of Keir Starmer, who she doesn't like, but lots of different suggestions in there. And thank you to Angie, who says, Peter, are you off to see Chesney Hawkes tomorrow night? Is that why you're doing the 1 to 4 p.m. show tomorrow? No, I'm not going to see Chesney Hawkes tomorrow night. I don't know what I'm doing tomorrow night, actually. Something different than presenting the show anyway, because Jeremy's off, so Ian Collins is filling in for Jeremy. So tomorrow from 6 o'clock a.m. to 10 a.m. will be Ian Collins doing the breakfast show. Then Julia, who'll be doing 10 till 1. I will be doing 1 till 4, filling in for Ian. Kevin will be doing 4 till 7, and someone else will be doing 7 till 10. And as soon as I know where that person is, I will tell you. We know, of course, that tonight and indeed tomorrow night between 10 and 1 will be Petri Hoskin. She's coming up in a few minutes' time after the news. I will make sure we have a quick chat with her before the 10 o'clock news to find out what's coming up on her programme. In the meantime, I want to get in as many calls as possible. Let's speak to John in Belfast about his views on Trump. John, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
I was just watching the interview today, the press conference today, and when they started to talk about Starmer, you could see the Irish Prime Minister getting very, he didn't look too healthy because...
Bit awkward for him. Bit awkward for him by the look of things.
Well, he also recognises Palestine as a state.
He does.
But I would say while Trump's up to date with him, I would reckon if he'd asked the Irish minister to land the boats or anything else, he would have got the exact same answer as Keir Starmer. That's why the Irish minister, was there not Israel that asked him to use their fields about a year and a half ago for something, and the Irish refused it?
Listen, there are lots of... I have many problems with the Irish government for lots of reasons, but particularly their attitude to Israel and what I believe is societal anti-Semitism in the Republic of Ireland. John, I mean, do you think that Starmer needs to stand up to Trump a bit more, or do you think he's doing the right course of action? What do you think?
I think, I have to be honest, being from Northern Ireland, ourselves with troubles. If I ever seen a weakness anywhere in the world, it has to be Keir Starmer. And that would be the country I would go
Yeah.
He's no balls to us, so let's see it.
John, I think a lot of people feel the same way. Thank you so much for your call. Let's talk to Sheldon in Swansea and about Iran. I think this is something that Sheldon wants to talk about. You're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Good evening, Peter. Thank you very much indeed.
Hi there.
Okay, can we go to the Iran war at the moment, please?
Sure.
I believe that this is an intractable problem because I think it's a war basically between Zionism and Islamism. And there's nothing new about this whole situation. I believe that basically we have a war couched in religious terms, but it's basically a secular war because we have the expansionist instincts of Bibi. We have.
In what way does Benjamin Netanyahu want to expand Israel?
Well, you only got to look at Gaza. You only got to look at the West Bank.
In what way, Sheldon? In what way have you only got to look at Gaza?
I do not believe he's happy with anything. The settler movement will tell you that on its own.
The settler movement in Israel, I have a lot of problems with, but I don't think there's any. Yeah. Hold on a second. I don't think there's any evidence that Benjamin Netanyahu wants the borders of Israel to be different.
Well, that may be your opinion. It's not mine. But on the other hand, this is not an anti-Semitic conversation. This is a factual conversation. And I believe the only reason why Trump was drawn into this war is because of the exceptionally powerful Jewish and Islamic element. Hang on.
I'm listening.
In the Senate, which his own people have warned him about.
I just don't agree with that at all, Sheldon. But listen, thanks for your call. Let's speak to John in West Lothian, who has some thoughts. John, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Good evening, Peter. I'm just absolutely horrified about the comments made by our wonderful Secretary of State for Energy, etc. How on earth can he expect to insult the British public by saying, go and get warm beer? He's playing to his audience, which is the vast majority of people who don't drink. You know, is he trying to change...
Or don't use pubs, or alternatively, John, don't drink beer.
Yeah. I mean, the man is just crazy. He's doing anything he can to destroy this country. We in Scotland have a huge operation on North Sea oil, which has been demolished completely, and we're relying on stupid wind farms, which we pay a fortune to people not to have them switched on, and we're buying them from China. I mean, the whole thing is absolutely crazy.
I think I agree with you.
I'm going on a bit.
No, not at all, John. No, I just think everything you're saying makes perfect sense, which is why I didn't interrupt you. I mean, what I find the most striking comment of this evening, I try to look back on shows and think what was the moment that was most striking for me. It was Andy Lennox, who is the pub owner there, saying, well, if you switch off a beer fridge and switch it on again the next morning, that actually uses more energy than switching it off. It's like, you know, opening a fridge, for example, uses a load of energy, and if you constantly open and close a fridge, you may as well just keep it open if you're preparing food, or you've got to go back to the fridge a lot. And I think it's the same kind of principle, and it shows two things, I think, John. I wonder what you think about this. It shows, on a basic level, a complete lack of understanding of what he's talking about and what it would be like to run a pub. I don't know about you, I would not want to go to a pub run by Ed Miliband. I don't think it would last very long. And then there's the kind of much bigger issue of just not understanding how real people live, particularly people who run businesses, and I just don't think Ed Miliband has a connection to those people. Is any of that unfair, John?
No, not at all. I think you're absolutely right. He's absolutely not got a clue about real people. And you're talking about businesses like pubs or local shopkeepers who have got to have the fridges on at all time to keep the food, you know, within law. It's just an imbecile type approach to real people, real businesses.
Yeah. I do wonder if he has thoughts on the temperature of bacon sandwiches as well. We don't know, John. But listen, thank you for your call. Appreciate that. You leave him laughing when you go. Steve says, Peter, for the record, lager isn't a real beer. He says with a big smiley emoji. The best beer is real ale, which is poured straight out of the barrel on gravity. Often a bitter, a version of pale ale, or a porter. These are served at room temperature, not warm, says Steve. I'm learning a lot about beer, I must say, this evening. Let's speak to Michael in Watford, who has some thoughts on the rape gangs inquiry. Michael, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Good evening, Peter. Well, it was regarding the comments you made when you were speaking to Mark.
Yes.
About the grooming gangs, and you said, do you not think that people want those grooming gang perpetrators prosecuted?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, they do, and I think every member of Reform UK I've ever met absolutely wants that to happen, and I was quite surprised at what Mark was saying.
Well, I just totally disagree. I do not think that the establishment want to drag up the grooming gang scandal because...
I agree with you on the establishment, but my point is Reform UK definitely want that inquiry to go ahead.
Yeah, of course they do.
Sure.
But I think they're keeping their powder dry, because if they make too much of a fuss about it, it suddenly turns into a racial issue.
Mm.
Obviously, Reform are definitely trying to avoid.
Yeah, it's a very interesting set of very interesting set of thoughts there, Michael. I just wonder whether you think the government inquiry is actually going to get the right answers and get justice for the victims.
Good grief, no. Good grief, absolutely not.
I mean, I'll just be honest with you, Michael. It hasn't really started yet, and there's so many people like you, so many of our viewers and listeners who just don't have any confidence in it, even before it started.
Well, you only got to look at the victims that were invited into the original inquiry.
Mm-hmm.
They pulled out.
Yeah, that's right. There were many people on the advisory committee for all of that, Michael. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
So they could see that their requirements, as it were, are never going to be met, because the people that were actually involved in it have been protected, and the people that allowed that to continue are also being protected. I'm talking about council workers, social workers, police, councillors. They're all trying to shore up their positions.
Okay.
So that they are trying not to get investigated themselves.
Okay.
So I think Reform are taking the right approach. When the time is right, Reform will bring that up. But at the moment, they're keeping their powder dry, and I think they're just going to come out with it as soon as they're in power.
Okay.
Hopefully.
We'll see what happens, Michael. Thanks for your thoughts. Appreciate them. I want to take a final call from Stan in Burnley. We'll have a chat with Petri Hoskin in just a second about what's coming up on her programme between 10 and 1. And I have it confirmed that Mark Dolan will be presenting this show tomorrow night. I'll be here between 1 and 4 tomorrow, but it's Mark Dolan who'll be here between 7 and 10. Stan, you have the final word tonight. What would you like to say?
Hiya.
Hi.
I'm just wondering where the British Lion has gone. Where's our strength anymore?
Yeah.
We used to be a powerhouse in the world. We have been reduced to a prime minister that's dressed by another man, his wife's dressed by another man. We've got Ed Miliband, who is a complete idiot. Where is, literally, I've got children, where is our strength anymore? Where is our power? Where is our voice?
Well, it's interesting because I think Donald Trump would agree with you in that. He certainly has said that he wants Keir Starmer to make decisions on his own without consulting others. Do you think that Trump was right in that?
I'm not sure about Trump, to be honest, but I want to be led. I want to have a leader that I can look up to. This guy, I am so disillusioned with what we're seeing right now in the UK. We've got energy under our feet.
And that's what I get from so many other people as well. Stan, thank you for that call. That was Stan in Burnley there. Really interesting show tonight, really, really interesting calls, and thank you for them, and please do keep them coming with Petri Hoskin, who's here in just a few minutes' time after the news. Good evening, Petri.
Good evening. Yeah, we're going to be talking about the potential for fuel rationing as well, and looking really, I mean, the last time that happened was in the 1970s, and it's not as bad as that, but if this does continue, then ministers are going to have to make really tough decisions, and it could be that they ration petrol for cars, it could be that they stop certain cars with certain number plates from running on alternate days, it could be a whole host of things like that. So we're going to be looking into that, because a lot of countries now, they've taken days off. They're, you know, in India they can't even burn their dead because of the gas.
Goodness me.
So there are real problems being caused by this, and if it goes on, and some people are predicting until September, then we are in trouble. No, not panic. We're nowhere near the 70s yet, but it's worth looking at it now. And that's also going to be the talk back at midnight. It's just saying that if you notice the fuel prices going up, if you live in the countryside, I've got friends who live in the countryside, I don't know why, but they do. And
a load of people in Northern Ireland with oil-fired central heating as well. Loads of people there.
Absolutely. And I want to hear from all of them, because a friend of mine said that she tried to buy some oil